Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are cracking open a stack of really fascinating historical sources. We're tracing the collapse of a regional giant, the mighty Union Kingdom of Daconia Ride.
Right, and this isn't just, a simple story of being conquered.
No, not at all. It's actually a chilling story of how a golden age just sort of dissolved into nearly 3 decades of brutal internal conflict, the infamous Antler Wars.
And our mission really is to give you the shortcut to understanding this catastrophe. We need to pinpoint where that internal, almost venomous dynastic drama collided with external military pressure.
From the Liori Empire, yeah.
Exactly. And how that combination completely shattered what was, for all intents and purposes, a regional superpower.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to really get the tragedy of the fall, you first have to understand the heights they fell from. We're talking about the High Middle Ages of Daconia.
Measured using the High Kingdom calendar, HKC as we'll call it.
Right, HKC. And this period, it wasn't just some small kingdom. It was a functioning, pretty ambitious regional power.
Its rise really kicks off in 324 HKC with Ionin the Unifier. He's the one who forged the actual Union Kingdom of Daconia and Ride.
And the power grew pretty fast after that. We get Elbrick the Beloved, who built up the Daconian army into, well, the sources say the most formidable host among all the Tarosi realms.
Which really set the stage for some serious geopolitical influence.
Then the absolute peak, the zenith, it seems to span 2 reigns. First, Raquerle IV the Eagle. He pushed Daconian influence south, secured dominion over those rich Lior territories.
And then Gareth III the Thrifty, he ruled right up until 455 HKC. And the sources, they're really clear on this. Gareth III's reign was the absolute high point. Power, justice, law, everything clicking.
And think about the physical growth. In 324 HKC, Daconia is basically just one ruined city, Chrysalis.
Yeah, amazing starting point.
But by the mid-5th century, multiple big cities, each with over 10,000 people, places like Dorosh, Rulok, Raphael, the port of Lior.
And crucially, these weren't just royal property. They were hubs for guilds, local government run by mayors, councils. That decentralized structure, it was actually a sign of their strength,
So how is the kingdom actually structured at this peak?
Oh, it was fascinatingly complex. You had the core union, Daconia and Ride, then 4 key duchies, Voltae, Ophuria, Nimhryce, and Qualis.
Qualis, that name keeps coming up. The sources call it the gateway.
Absolutely, the gateway. Control over trade, access, security. Losing Qualis would be, well, devastating.
Makes sense.
And you can't forget the military province, the March of Lower Thrium, way out east, always fighting, reclaiming lands from trolls for allies like the Ordampians and Lugrians. It kept the army sharp. Experience.
So basically, a kingdom firing on all cylinders. They must have thought their power was pretty much eternal.
You'd think so. But what's really fascinating here, the thing that brings it all down, it wasn't one single blow from outside.
Right.
It was this perfect storm, 2 distinct failures crashing together, external pressure and just fatal internal dynastic drama.
Okay, let's start with the external. That's the rise of the Liori Empire under this tyrant king, Roishar Veluser.
We don't get much on his personality from the sources, but his military effectiveness, undeniable. In 465 HKC, Daconia suffers this catastrophic defeat.
And they lose Qualis, the gateway.
Exactly, a massive strategic shock. But the secondary effect, arguably worse for Daconia's internal stability, Housedrain, who'd ruled Qualis since Ionin the Unifier's time.
Yeah.
The Lors completely exterminated them, not just defeated or exiled, wiped out, extirpated.
Wait, hang on. The loss of an entire ancient ruling house like the Drains. What did that do to the other nobles? That power vacuum.
Oh, it instantly changed the whole game. It removed a major stabilizing force, right? And suddenly you're down to just 3 main players left. The powerful Dwarzins, the equally strong Raquerles, and then the third house, noticeably the weakest, the Shumbras.
So losing Qualis wasn't just territory. It fundamentally shifted the power balance inside Daconia. Made everyone more suspicious, maybe.
Definitely amplified the tensions. So if Qualis is the external wound weakening the body politic.
Then let's look at the internal infection, the one already festering inside the royal family during Gareth III's last years. Here's where it gets really interesting and pretty dark.
Indeed it does. The core of this whole mess revolves around what history calls the 3 queens and the succession crisis that erupts.
The immediate spark, the catalyst.
Yeah.
It's just chilling. Queen Diane's fee Tauphyn, Gareth III's wife.
His consort, yeah.
She literally poisons the air, her own infant grandson. because she decided he was unfit to rule.
Dianes, let's call her the poisoner, she was calculating, determined to get her own bloodline, the Tauphins, who were actually a minor house, onto the throne, but
the child's mother, Nimhryce, the deceiver maybe, she moves fast.
immediately covers up the crime, pretends her son died, hides him away. Just waits.
Wow. That's a terrifying gamble, hiding the rightful king.
Huge risk, but it pays off. When Gur III finally dies, Nimhryce pulls off this dramatic reveal, presents her living son to claim the throne.
And that moment, that deception, that's what lights the fuse.
Instantly, ignites the First Antler War. Queen Dianes calls on her family, the Tauphins, to back her preferred candidate, her other son, Tauphyn. She argues the real heir's dead anyway, right?
So the Tauphins actually try to seize power.
They seize the capital, Chrysalis, demand Tauphyn is recognized.
Okay, occupying the capital. That's crossing a line.
Big time. It forces the other big houses, the Raquerles and Nimhryce's Doyersons, to unite against them. And the payback. It's swift and unbelievably brutal.
How brutal are we talking?
The sources describe a purge, a massacre, really. Tauphyn, his own heir, nearly 50 members of House Tauphyn executed.
50 members, including the queen.
Including Dianese, the poisoner herself, gone. This level of violence in internal Daconian politics, it was unheard of. It guaranteed that this resentment, this hatred, wouldn't just fade, it would harden.
So Nimhryce and the Doyersons win. They put her son, Ger IV, on the throne. But then they make a huge mistake, don't they?
A critical political blunder. They don't trust the young king. Or maybe they just liked holding the reins. They set up a permanent regency. They refused to let Ger V actually rule.
Hold on. A permanent regency.
Yes. Let's pause on that. This permanent regency is where they deliberately undermine the kingdom's legal foundation. They just fought a bloody war supposedly defending the legitimate succession.
Right, for Ger V.
And then they immediately neuter the authority of the very king they installed. They're basically saying, yeah, power can be grabbed by force and held indefinitely by a faction. Forget tradition.
That's incredibly bold.
Yeah.
Why would the Raquerles, their allies in the war, just let them do that? Seems like a massive oversight.
Maybe they thought the Doyersons could handle the mess the kingdom was in. Who knows? But here's the crushing irony.
Okay.
This Doyerson regency, won through brutal internal fighting, turned out to be completely inept at managing the external threats. They oversaw the continuing decline.
So things kept getting worse.
Yeah. Loss of dominion over Lior, the eventual final destruction of Qualis. They solved the internal problem only to make the external crises catastrophically worse.
Wow. Okay, so after that brutal civil war, they try to patch things up.
They try. Queen Regent Nimhryce arranges a marriage for her son, King Ger IV. She marries him to Nimhryce Pered.
Nimhryce? Wait, Pered, that's Tauphyn's family name, isn't it?
Exactly. Tauphyn's daughter. Her father was just executed by Nimhryce's faction.
So you're marrying the king to the daughter of the man his mother's faction just killed.
Precisely. Recipe for disaster, right? Nimhryce, let's call her the resentful bride. She had every reason to hate her new in-laws. Plus, her mother's side connected her to the Chambrazes, the weakest house.
Okay, this can't end well. What happens next?
Predictably, the weak king, Ger IV, dies pretty quickly. But Nimhryce is pregnant? That secures her position.
So she becomes queen regent.
She ascends the throne herself, actually. Gives birth to Nimhryce Pered. The deal is he gets the throne at 15, she rules until then.
And how was her rule? Let me guess.
Fueled by resentment. It quickly spiraled into corruption, extravagance. She gave way too much power to her lover, this Pedane Vasilier.
Dumb boy.
And that combo corruption, waste, favoritism, it angered everyone. The common people in Chrysalis, the big lords out in the duchies, they started ignoring her, basically usurping her authority piece by piece. She was losing grip.
She needed help. A lifeline.
And it pops up from the most unlikely and frankly dangerous place. The disgraced House Tauphyn. A man named Rolan Tauphyn.
Rolan Tauphyn. Related to the ones they purged.
Distantly, yes. But he was a military marvel. A genuine hero. He managed to recapture the island fortress of Silis from the Luoris.
Silis. That's huge, right? Secures the harbor?
Exactly. Secures the harbor of Chrysalis. First major military win in ages. The public loved him for it.
So he becomes a big deal.
Huge. Becomes governor of Lower Threum, that key military province. And crucially, the army there, absolutely loyal to him. So he has military power, popular support, and that Tauphyn connection.
Okay, I see where this is going. Nimhryce sees an opportunity.
She does. She needs allies against the lords stripping her power. She reaches out to her mother's family, House and Braz, and then seeks a formal alliance with Rolan.
The military hero from the Purged House.
And that was the moment the ruling houses, Raquerle and Rolan, saw red flags everywhere. This new alliance, it brought together the resentful queen, the super competent military leader from the family they'd almost wiped out, and the weakest major house, potentially shifting the balance completely.
What finally pushed them over the edge?
It was personal, but with massive political fallout. News got out. Queen Nimhryce was pregnant by Rolan.
Oh, wow.
And she fully intended to marry him.
Marry the war hero governor.
Think about it. A marriage, a new child. That child would be a Tauphyn. It would cement the return of the very house they brutally purged decades before. It was too much power consolidating in the hands of their old and potentially future enemies.
So they couldn't let it happen.
No way. The Raquerles and Rolans moved fast, prepared for war, and then, boom, a decisive coup in 484 HKC.
A coup against the queen.
Overthrew her, abducted Queen Nimhryce, and they grabbed the crown prince Amer too, who was still just a kid.
That was the justification.
Treason and adultery against Nimhryce, that was the official charge. Of course, the Nimhryces and the Tauphyn screamed foul. They called it what it likely was. A power grab by the houses, terrified of losing their regency control.
So what does this all mean? This coup, this is it.
This is the breaking point. This violent move against the queen herself, but by the established ruling houses, it shatters the fragile peace completely, divides Daconia into warring factions. This coup, 484 HKC, is the official start of the Antler Wars.
Against a civil war, right.
Nearly 3 decades, yeah. The sources confirm it just rips the Union Kingdom apart into separate independent states. That political culture built on poison and purges. It basically guaranteed no reconciliation was possible for generations.
Is there any, glimmer of hope in the sources after all that?
There is a hint, yeah. A big one for future dives. The material mentions that eventually a new Daconia does emerge, rebuilt under, get this, one of the most peculiar monarchs in Daconian history. Heralds the dawn of modern times for them.
Peculiar. Okay. Intriguing.
But of course, no sooner is it reunified than it faces a brand new threat from the north. Peace never lasts long, it seems.
So let's recap. The fall of this huge kingdom, Daconia Riding.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't one big invasion. It was this catastrophic internal chain reaction.
Started by very personal, ruthless actions. The poisoner, Queen Dianus, the deceiver, Bethrice, the resentful bride, Nimhryce. Their choices just leveraged these powerful houses against each other.
And brought a superpower to its knees, which of course let external enemies like the Leoris take advantage.
Exactly. Which brings up a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. When you study collapses like this, do the big geopolitical shifts like the Leori Empire rising or losing Qualis, do they matter more?
Or are they just the result of, ruthless personal ambition and backstabbing?
Right. The sources here really suggest that for Daconia, the rot started from within. That culture of dynastic betrayal and vendetta, that was the real fuel, long before the armies actually started marching.
And a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Remember House Chambroise,
Yeah.
noted as the weakest of the big houses early on.
Yeah.
Their decision to back Nimhryce and the military powerhouse Rolan, the alliance that triggered the coup. How might that gamble have changed their position during the next 30 years of war?
That's a great point. They started as the weakest, but by choosing that side, maybe they were positioned to gain the most out of the chaos that followed. Something to definitely mull over. Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, our mission is to plunge into one of the most, explosive periods in Daconian history.
That's right. We're looking at the final days of the High Middle Ages.
Exactly. We're zeroing in on the really dramatic downfall of Queen Nimhryce and the political chaos that followed, which, ignited the Antler Wars, that whole decades-long civil conflict.
And to really get a handle on this conflict, you have to understand the foundations that were, basically crumbling at the time.
Okay.
We're talking in the mid-5th century HKC. Daconia's political balance was, at least on paper, rooted in this very strict, very clear four-caste structure. comes right from the Tarosi, really.
Right, the four castes. So you had the Ventinari, they were the spiritual leaders, the priests, and so on. Then the Kiliari, the martial caste, the warriors, the army.
The fighters, yeah.
The Emetiniari, they were the merchants, the traders.
Yep, trade and commerce.
And finally, the Uliniari, the farmers, the peasants, basically the foundation of society.
Exactly. And look, when those four pillars are stable, generally the kingdom functions. It works.
But when the elites start, playing these violent power games.
That's when those divisions, the spiritual, military, economic, they get stretched really thin. The whole structure starts to wobble, and society itself risks just shattering.
And the sources we have, they paint this incredibly detailed picture of the trigger event. It's quite something.
It really is.
A swift coup, accusations flying around based on a spy plot from, decades earlier?
Yeah, involving ciphered letters, no less.
And then this frantic, almost kinetic war of messengers before the armies even really mobilize. So we need to understand not just the mechanics, how the coup happened, but why. Why was Daconia so fragile that it just shattered into total war almost overnight?
That's the core question, really.
Let's start with Queen Nimhryce herself. I mean, her position was precarious right from the start, wasn't it?
Fundamentally shaky, yes. You have to remember her background. Daughter of Tauphyn, the executed usurper.
Right, that alone would make the nobility nervous.
Definitely gave them pause. And then her husband, King Geir IV, he dies young. So she becomes queen regent, ruling for her young son, Amer.
She was carrying a lot of political baggage, though.
Heavy baggage, yes. And frankly, she didn't do herself many favors. Her authority started eroding pretty much straight away.
What were the main factors there?
Well, the first big one was a very public, very damaging scandal. Her excessive favoritism towards her lover, Pedaine Vasilière.
Ah, yes. That caused ripples, didn't it?
Huge ripples, bred widespread resentment, not just among the great noble houses, but it even trickled down. Commoners saw the appointments that followed as basically corrupt. It undermined trust.
Okay, so contrast that with the man who would, arguably either save or doom her reign, Roland of Tauphyn.
Ah, Roland. Now, there's a figure. He comes from a disgraced house, House Tauphyn, but he just explodes onto the scene as this incredible war hero.
His big moment was winning back the fortress of Silis, right?
Exactly. A critical island fortress. That victory was absolutely monumental. And crucially, it earned him the fierce, unwavering loyalty of the army.
So the Kiliari caste, particularly the veterans.
The veteran troops, yes. He had the military machine devoted to him. And Nimhryce, well, she saw this. She recognized this was maybe her only path to securing her own power.
And that leads to this critical pivot. Nimhryce plans to marry Roland.
And she's carrying his child.
So if this marriage happens, you suddenly have House Chambraz, her uncle's house, aligning with House Tauphyn, plus the crown, plus the army's loyalty. That's a powerful block.
Immensely powerful.
So for Houses Raquerle and Rolan, what did they stand to lose? Was it just status or more?
Oh, it was everything to them. This potential alliance fundamentally threatened the established hierarchy they represented. Raquerle and Rolan were deeply entrenched powers, you see.
Right.
And they were terrified that House Tauphyn, this disgraced house, would use Roland's military might and Nimhryce's royal title to basically reclaim permanent dominance over the whole kingdom.
So this wasn't just about Nimhryce anymore. It was about stopping Tauphyn's return.
Precisely. For Raquerle and Rolan, this potential marriage, this alliance, it was the ultimate intolerable tipping point. They felt they had to act.
Which meant striking fast.
Indeed.
Yeah.
The coup itself was executed in late 484 HKC. Very swift.
And the leaders were?
The primary figures were Duchess Divis ve Raquerle. She held the very powerful position of Chancellor and Duke Robrek Dorazan, the treasurer, key positions of state power.
And the sources are incredibly specific about the date. The deposition happened on the 6th day of the 10th month, 484 HKC.
Remarkable detail, isn't it?
But the timing wasn't just precise, it was strategically deceptive, as I understand it.
Absolutely. It was a calculated move, designed to ensure maximum chaos and minimal resistance from anyone loyal to the queen.
How so?
Well, Duke Arthur de Chambraz, remember, he's the queen's uncle and the Marshal of the Realm, the top military commander. His spies were deliberately fed false information. They were told the coup would happen 4 days later than it actually did.
So when the coup leaders struck early...
Exactly. Duke Arthur's forces were completely unprepared. The capital, Chrysalis, just descended into chaos. A chaotic struggle right inside the royal palace. Speed and confusion were absolutely the coup's best weapons.
Okay, so they seize power through surprise and deception, but they need justification, right?
Yeah.
You can't just depose a queen. What was their charge?
High treason. They needed something devastating, something with historical weight that could neutralize the queen's authority, her very title.
And the specific accusation.
It was devastating because it tapped into the kingdom's greatest recent military humiliation, the fall of Scylla's castle.
The very fortress Rolan later recaptured.
The very same. The coup leaders claimed that Crown Prince Amer, the queen's own young son, had conveniently discovered some ciphered letters and a code book.
Convenient indeed.
Allegedly, these documents proved that Nimhryce herself was the spy who nearly 20 years before, back in 465 HKC, had leaked the critical weakness of Scylla's castle.
Which was?
Its sewage exhaust system.
Wait, she supposedly betrayed the sewage system.
Precisely. That leak allegedly allowed the enemy Luri forces to infiltrate the fortress, leading to its catastrophic fall.
Wow. So by linking Nimhryce to the fall of Silas, they weren't just attacking her politically.
They were attacking her legitimacy as a Daconian patriot. They were trying to recast all that political baggage, her father being a usurper, into a confirmed act of treasonous espionage against the realm itself. A masterstroke of political framing, really.
Okay, coup complete, justification established or at least claimed. What was their next move to consolidate control across the royal domain?
Immediately, messengers were dispatched, all across Daconia Ryden, carrying scrolls that laid out their justification for the deposition.
A rapid PR campaign, essentially.
You could call it that. They promised the realm that the actual evidence, those ciphered letters, the codebook, would be presented formally later, at a public court in Kresmir, scheduled for the fall of 485 HKC.
So buying time?
Buying time and trying to frame it legally. In the meantime, they declared the kingdom was under the control of the Royal Council, an interregnum. They were painting illegal violence as, necessary temporary legal due process.
Right. Let's shift to the reaction. The pro-Nimhryce side obviously wasn't going to just accept this temporary interregnum.
Not a chance.
Duke Arthur Chambras, the Marshal, and Marquis Count Rolan, who immediately went public, announcing his marriage to the queen and proclaiming himself king consort.
A bold move in itself.
They fired back with a stern counter-ultimatum, didn't they?
They did. Their response was essentially a declaration of war, just dressed up as a legal document.
What'd it say?
They accused Duchess Divis, the Chancellor, and Duke Robrek, the Treasurer, point blank. Treason, illegal violence, abduction of the Queen and Prince.
And their demands?
Designed to be impossible to meet, really. First, immediate restoration of Queen Nimhryce and the safe return of Crown Prince Amer. Second, the coup leaders, Divis and Robrek, must surrender themselves, unarmed, and present their supposed evidence only to the Marshal of the realm, Duke Arthur.
So, surrender to their chief opponent.
Exactly. And third, they demanded a full apology to the Queen, the Prince, Duke Arthur, and the newly proclaimed King Consort Rolan.
Not likely to happen.
Not at all. And the threat attached was crystal clear and legally binding according to Daconian law at the time. Failed to comply within 3 days, and every commander in the realm was legally obligated to seize, arrest, or even slay the coup leaders as rebels.
So that ultimatum basically forced everyone to choose a side. It escalated things from a palace coup to a kingdom-wide civil war obligation.
Instantly. No middle ground left.
And this kicks off what the sources call the War of Messengers in early 485 HKC. Now, Duchess Divis, the pro-coup chancellor, her initial response wasn't military, was it? It was something different.
It was brilliant, in a ruthless way. A tactical information blockade.
How did that work?
She deployed her specialized forces, the Skydinas. These were elite female horse archer knights.
Wow.
And their mission was to hunt down and destroy the scrolls being sent out by the opposing pro-Rolan faction, intercept the messengers, blend the declarations.
So literally trying to control the narrative by silencing the opposition's messages before they could spread.
Precisely. It's fascinating, isn't it? The first real shots of the Antler Wars weren't arrows aimed at soldiers, but efforts to stop the spread of paper scrolls. Medieval information warfare.
While this information war is raging, the coup faction was also shoring up its economic power.
Yes, Duke Robrek Dorazan, the treasurer, had been busy. He'd already managed to smuggle the entire Kreisler's treasury, all the gold reserves, out of the capital and secured it in Dovais.
Giving them a huge financial advantage right away.
Immediate financial flexibility, exactly. Meanwhile, Chancellor Dias, controlling the official chancellery messengers, ensured her faction's scrolls and propaganda got distributed much more effectively than the Loyalists. They had the money and the message network initially.
We also need to touch on why the Loyalists couldn't just crush this immediately. Duke Arthaire was the Marshal of the realm. Why couldn't he mobilize faster?
Well, there's the crucial context. Three-quarters, a huge majority of Daconia Ryden's bannermen, including many forces loyal to Antler and Rolan, were already tied down, deeply engaged in ongoing, very bloody conflicts elsewhere, fighting West Lior on one front and battling the mountain trolls of the Orode Plateau on another.
So their best troops, their most experienced soldiers, were stuck on distant borders.
Exactly. Rapid mobilization back to the capital to deal with the coup was simply impossible in the short term. It gave the coup faction vital breathing room.
Okay, so let's look at how the two sides positioned themselves as the actual fighting started to loom. The pro-coup faction, Raquerle and Rolan, where did they set up?
They established their headquarters up north in El Satari. Their forces began advancing from the north and west, and critically, they summoned their preferred claimant to the throne.
Providing an alternative monarch?
Yes, the scholar prince, Raphael gave their cause a veneer of legitimacy, an alternative focus for loyalty beyond just opposing Nimhryce.
What about the reaction within the kingdom? How did the news of the coup actually land?
This adds a layer of real complexity for the loyalists, the news of Queen Nimhryce being deposed. In major cities like the economic hub Dovaish and the big trade city Vacor, it was met with genuine celebration.
Celebration, not anger.
Public celebration, yes.
Yeah.
You have to understand, this wasn't necessarily people endorsing treason. It was more like relief.
Relief from what?
From Nimhryce's recent rule. It had been marked by really unpopular policies, excessive taxation, crippling levels of debt, those corrupt appointments we mentioned, extravagant spending that just drained the coffers.
So for the merchants, the Amatiniari, and the farmers, the Uliniari, the coup felt like maybe an escape from bad government.
Exactly. It offered a potential release from what they saw as oppressive, draining leadership. Their immediate concerns were economic, practical.
But there was a counter-movement forming around Rolan, wasn't there?
Oh yes, rapidly solidifying, primarily driven by the martial caste, the Kilniari.
The soldiers loyal to him.
Veteran soldiers, specifically. Many of whom had actually been granted farms in the eastern counties by Rolan himself after his victories. They rose up almost immediately, forming their own regiments.
Taking action.
Seizing towns. Kardasmigi was apparently the first. And then the key city of Veriara swore allegiance directly to King Rolan. This loyalty wasn't really about Nimhryce for them. It was military gratitude, personal loyalty to Rolan, the promise of a warrior king leading them.
This really brings us back to those foundations, the forecasts. What do the sources tell us about the general feeling, the overall sentiment across Daconian society during this explosion?
It's quite striking, actually. The sources suggest that almost every level of society, from the Uliniari farmers and Amatiniari merchants, right up through the Kilniari soldiers, and even the Ventinari spiritual leaders, they wanted very little part in this elite political struggle.
They weren't picking sides enthusiastically.
Quite the opposite. They seem to have been united primarily by exhaustion.
Exhaustion from?
Years of border wars, the disruption to trade caused by all the instability, rampant poverty. The land was weary. They desperately craved arbitration, some kind of peaceful resolution. A civil war between noble factions was the absolute last thing any of the four pillars of society wanted or needed.
It sounds like a terrible irony. The kingdom's stability was supposed to rest on those forecasts working together.
And yet, in this moment of crisis, the nobility, the political elite, they seemed completely focused on their own personal, power-driven feud. They utterly disregarded the clear, unified desire of the general population for peace.
So wrapping this up, what have we seen here? The end of Nimhryce's reign unfolds as this incredibly personal, violent political struggle. It's framed legally using these dramatic, high treason accusations centered on a sewage system leak, of all things.
Still find that detail amazing.
Executed with stolen gold, strategic deception, even those Skydinas, the female archer knights hunting down messengers to control information flow.
It's an incredible confluence of factors.
So what's the key insight for you, the listener, to take away from this deep dive?
I think the core point is this. The Antler Wars didn't begin just because the political lines were drawn between Nimhryce and her opponents. It ignited Because the political elite, obsessed with legitimacy, consolidating their own power and settling old scores, completely discounted the profound exhaustion and poverty gripping the general population.
It wasn't a popular uprising demanding change then.
No, not at all. It was fundamentally an aristocratic fight, a power struggle at the top, that the vast majority of people across all castes were desperate to avoid. They wanted stability, not more war.
Which leaves us with a really important question for you to mull over, something to think about as you process all these details. When the entire social structure, all four of those foundational castes, the farmers, merchants, soldiers, priests, when they all actively desire peace, arbitration, and end to the conflict, how much longer can the nobility really justify prolonging a war based purely on their own power consolidation and personal grievances?
At what point does that sheer weight of popular unified exhaustion become the decisive force, the thing that finally reshakes the whole political landscape, regardless of what the elites want? That disregard for the common will, you could argue, ultimately sealed Daconia's fate in this period.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really getting into it, immersing ourselves in the political furnace that ignited Daconia's biggest conflict, the Antler Wars.
It all kicks off, really, in 484 HKC. Queen Nimhryce is deposed by Duchess Divis of Raquerle and Duke Robrek Doizen.
And boom, immediate chaos. The sources call it the War of Messengers.
Yeah, that's such a great phrase because it wasn't about armies clashing, not yet anyway. It was purely about legitimacy, who had the right to rule.
Because you immediately had Duke Arthur and, crucially, Roland Tauphyn challenging the deposition, calling it treason.
Exactly. So Divis and Robrek, the coup leaders, they needed a figurehead, someone with the right name, the right background.
And not another general, right? They already had military challenges.
Precisely. They needed a political counterweight.
Right.
And they chose Raphael de Raquerle, the scholar prince, known as the Leaf Cloak.
And this sets up what our sources frame as the core tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Roland's kind of martial kingship idea versus Raphael's attempt at scholarly legitimacy.
That's the heart of it for this period. And that's our mission today, isn't it? To look past the battlefields that came later
Right.
and analyze Raphael's initial strategy, this whole idea of preparing a legal case against the queen.
And how that strategy got tangled up in, well, a devastating personal tragedy in his own household. A tragedy that basically cemented the kingdom's split.
It really did. So let's start there. The choice of Raphael. Why a scholar when war is brewing?
It seems counterintuitive, perhaps.
Well, it was precisely because he was a scholar combined with that Raquerle name, the powerful dynasty.
So he wasn't seen as just another power-hungry general like maybe Roland was perceived.
Exactly. He was positioned as the sober, the legitimate alternative to Nimhryce, whose rule was, let's face it, discredited. His job was to use law, not force, to dismantle the old regime.
He genuinely thought he could stop the Antler Wars before they really started, if he could just build a strong enough indictment.
We see him, don't we, in late 484, early 485 HKC, working away in this modest house in Divaldi.
Yeah, compiling evidence, trying to prove Nimhryce committed treason years ago.
It's quite an image. The scholar versus the generals armed with paper and precedent.
And he wasn't alone. His wife was there, right? Ventinera Cecily of Nia.
Yes, and she was heavily pregnant at the time. Now, Ventinera, that's important. It means she was a highly educated woman, a scholar, a spiritual advisor, a really respected role.
So her input was vital to this legal case.
Absolutely central. Her legal mind, her scholarship, they were partners in this endeavor.
Okay, so this intense legal work is happening, but it gets complicated by Crown Prince Amer.
Oh, definitely. Raphael had been Amer's tutor between 481 and 484 HKC, and the sources paint a picture of a really difficult relationship.
Consumed by paranoia, it says. Amer suspected everyone, his mother, Nimhryce, even Raphael.
Yeah, deep paranoia. But ironically, he apparently grew quite devoted to Raphael's lessons. History, lore, that sort of thing.
Until the paranoia took over again in 484, and he just dismissed Raphael abruptly.
Which makes what happened next even more dramatic. Just a month before Nimhryce was actually deposed, Amer shows up again, panicked.
He'd fled his mother.
Yes, convinced she was about to replace him as heir, possibly with a child fathered by Rolan. He runs straight to Raphael and Chrysalis.
And he brings something crucial with him.
The jackpot, really. A bundle of ciphered letters from Nimhryce's own chambers. And the codebook needed to read them.
So Raphael and Chesley get to work decoding these.
And they find everything. 2 massive secrets.
First, the proof Raphael needed for his case. Evidence of Nimhryce's espionage, her treason against Daconia.
Check. That's what he was looking for. But then there was the second thing, the grievous secret, as one source puts it.
Amer wasn't King Geir V's son.
No, he was the illegitimate son of Nimhryce's favorite guard, Padain Vasilier, meaning no royal blood, no actual right to the throne he was heir to.
Wow. So Raphael, the guy trying to build this case for legitimacy based on law, suddenly holds the secret that completely obliterates the existing legitimacy of the crown prince.
Let's talk about a political minefield. And it forced Raphael into a defining choice, a really critical one.
He decided to keep the parentage secret.
He did. He argued it had, quote, no relevance to the espionage charges against Nimhryce. That was his focus.
Well, was that him sticking to his principles? Scholarly legitimacy, keep the focus narrow, avoid unnecessary chaos? Or was he just naive about how power really works?
That's the million-cat question about Raphael, isn't it? His argument was purely about stability.
He thought revealing Amer's illegitimacy would just throw fuel on the fire.
Instantly. He believed it would make himself, or Rolan, the immediate contenders for the throne, which meant war. Guaranteed. The very thing he was trying to stop.
So his gamble was successfully prosecute Nimhryce quietly, stabilize the kingdom, and deal with the Amer problem later. Even if it meant propping up a lie for a while.
That seems to be the calculation, but he wasn't getting universal agreement on this. Not even close.
Duchess Divis, his main backer. She wanted it all out there.
She did, and so did his wife, Chesley. They both urged him, apparently quite strongly, to reveal everything. They saw the danger, of having a prince whose claim could just evaporate.
So the ethical tightrope Raphael was walking. Reveal a truth that could cause immediate war, or hide it and risk a bigger crisis down the line based on a lie.
He chose caution. Stability over truth, at least for the moment.
But things were getting tense personally, too. Amer was staying near them in Duvaldi, near the university.
Yes, and Chesley, remember, she's a Ventinera, concerned with spiritual well-being. But she started getting really scared.
Because Amer's paranoia was turning on them.
Exactly. He apparently started asking her, quite directly, if she planned to murder him, to clear the way for her own unborn child's claim to the throne.
Oh, the irony, given the secret they were keeping about his claim.
It's devastating. You have this political storm brewing outside, and inside Raphael's house, it's becoming this psychological pressure cooker.
And then the outside storm breaks in. Rolan v. Tauphyn lands forces at Chrysalis.
Yep, 15th of Pravani, 485 HKC, 2,500 men from the lower Threum and Qualis. The war Raphael tried to prevent, with paper just arrived, 19 miles down the road.
And Raphael wasn't even home. He was at an inn nearby.
Right, caught off guard, he had to make a quick escape. The sources say he disguised himself, garbed in the veil of a Ventinera, to slip past patrols.
Wow. And raced back to Duvaldi with his precious legal case, the testimonials.
He gets back, or near Duvaldi, and he's met by Lord Carthwar Vafakai. He's the commander of the Dwarven forces, remember, Divis and Robrecht's allies.
And Carthwar says, you need to get out, now. Evacuate to Cresmere. Bad weather, Roland's troops too close.
But Raphael hesitates. Chesley is heavily pregnant. Travel would be dangerous for her. He wants to wait.
And this is where Carthwar delivers that line, that absolutely callous remark.
It's shocking. He basically says, we'll get you both out, but if she dies, and he uses the phrase, all fodder forbid, don't worry, you won't lack for another lady or another child.
Aimed right at Chesley, who wasn't from one of the great noble houses. Just brutal dismissal, political calculation at its rawest.
Raphael was, as the sources say, incensed. And you can see why. It shows the kind of ruthless pragmatism he was dealing with from his supposed allies.
So you have the military threat, the psychological tension with Amer, and now this deep personal insult and pressure from his allies.
It all comes to a head the very next night, the 16th of Pravani, just 24 hours after that insult.
This is the tragedy.
It is. Chesley was doing her duty as a Ventinera, tending to Amer in the guest chamber. He was apparently in some kind of spiritual agony.
Raphael is woken by a scream.
He rushes in. Lord Carthwar arrives moments later, perhaps alerted by the commotion. And the scene they find.
Chesley, slain, throat cut with a kitchen knife.
And Raphael is on the floor, violently smashing Prince Amer's head against the floorboards.
Carthur's soldiers had to pull him off to stop him from killing the prince right there.
Yes, and in that instant, any hope of a clear legal resolution just shatters. Everything becomes contested.
So what was Raphael's story? What did he claim happened?
His immediate version, the official story put out, was that Amer had tried to escape. That the prince attacked him first, Raphael had a wound in his side to prove it, and then murdered Cecily.
Why? What was Amer's supposed motive?
To eliminate them both. Raphael, Cecily, and their unborn child. To remove any potential rivals, however distant, to his own shaky claim to the throne.
And this became the justification for the immediate evacuation Carthor wanted.
Precisely. Raphael was rushed off to Cresmere to be declared the rival king. Amer, traumatized and now accused of murder, was packed off to exile in Castrand.
And the sources mention Raphael never forgave Carthor. But not for the murder, but for being denied a chance to say goodbye to his wife.
That's the detail they include, yes. It adds another layer of complexity to his relationship with Carthor.
Okay, that's Raphael's version. But Rolan's side, they didn't buy it.
Not for a second. They spun a completely different, much darker narrative. They basically pointed the finger straight back at Raphael and Carthor.
Their claim being?
That Carthor had told Raphael he'd only get the full backing of the Dordan forces if Cecily was removed. That she, being of lower birth, was politically inconvenient, an obstacle.
So they accused Raphael himself, the scholar prince, murdering his own pregnant wife.
Yes. And that the attack on Amer was just a clumsy effort to frame the unstable prince and cover up the real crime, all done to secure the military support he needed to become king.
They even questioned if Raphael was really back in Duvaldi in time, didn't they? Suggested maybe the whole espionage case against Nimhryce was faked.
They threw everything at him, undermining his presence, his evidence, his character. It became incredibly vicious, incredibly fast.
So the man tasked with finding legal truth becomes the center of these completely opposing, politically motivated truths.
As one source perfectly summarizes it, in those days, truth became a matter of choice, and every man held his own version of events.
And that division, right there in that bloody room in Duvaldi, paved the way for two kings, two claims, and the Antler Wars proper.
The legal, scholarly path Raphael envisioned was completely buried under military necessity, political maneuvering, and frankly, brutal violence.
So this deep dive really highlights Raphael Leafcloak's arc, from this respected scholar trying to use law for stability,
to a reluctant claimant forced onto the political stage,
who then becomes either the victim or maybe the perpetrator of this absolutely horrific personal tragedy.
And all while holding on to that explosive secret about Amer's parentage. The secret he kept quiet to prevent conflict, only to find himself at the very center of it.
It's a profound tragedy, isn't it? The scholar whose tools, law, reason, legitimacy proved completely inadequate once the general started moving pieces on the board.
His strategy just couldn't cope with the reality of the power plays, the personalities, the sheer chaos he was trying to manage.
Now, looking at those competing narratives about Cecily's death, they both serve clear political ends, painting either Amer or Raphael as monstrous.
Right. One narrative supports Rolan by discrediting Raphael. The other supports Raphael by removing Amer as a factor and justifying Raphael's claim.
But there's that one piece that doesn't quite fit either narrative perfectly, is there?
There is. And it's something worth thinking about. Let's take Rolan's version for a moment. Assume the worst. Raphael did conspire with Carthor to murder Cecily to secure political backing.
A horrifying thought. But if we follow that logic...
If the goal was purely political advantage, why frame Amer for the murder?
He was already weak, right?
Yeah.
Politically vulnerable. And Raphael knew the ultimate secret about his parentage that could destroy him anyway.
Exactly. If you're Raphael in that scenario, and you've just committed this terrible act for power, who is your real obstacle? Who is the person you need to neutralize?
Roland Tauphyn.
Mm-hmm.
The man challenging your claim with an army.
Precisely. Why wouldn't you try to frame Roland? Pin the murder on your main political and military rival. Why go through the trouble of framing the doomed prince?
Framing Amer seems less strategically effective if ruthless political gain was the sole motive.
It does raise a question, doesn't it? If you accept the premise of Raphael's guilt and collusion, the choice of scapegoat seems odd. It doesn't directly target his most dangerous opponent.
That's definitely something to think about. Why frame the pawn when you could have tried to frame the rival king? That's the point for you, our listener, to perhaps mull over or explore on your own.
of wisdom with a cross to write. A noble scholar, Raphael the bright, with ink-stained hands and a heart so true, he tutored a prince 12 summers anew. Just highly of the faith and very pure, a spirit light, her purpose sure. With gentle hand she healed and cared, a love so deep her soul she bared. But Raquerle's shadow, dark and wide, crept through halls where secrets hide. A prince, a scholar, a tale of woe, a tragedy spun in the candle's glow. A pirate prince with a crown in sight, torn by fears in the dead of night. He loved his tutor, yet fear took hold, a shadow cast from tales of old. Raquerle, they whispered, once ruled with dread, a puppet king by his mother led. A mayor feared that fate might loom to walk the path of Raquerle's doom. But Raquerle's shadow, dark and wide, crept through halls where secrets hide. A prince, a scholar, a tale of woe, a tragedy spun in the candle's glow. In the cold of night, when storm went high, the prince's heart gave out a cry. A knife was drawn in terror's grip, a tragic act of fate's cruel death. The sun he found pure as the dawn, a light extinguished, a spirit gone. Raphael's cries echo through the night, a shadows danced in the pale moonlight. For Raquerle's shadow, dark and wide, crept through halls where secrets hide. A prince, a scholar, a tale of woe, a tragedy spun in the candle's glow. Now tales are told of the faithful night, of broken trust and vain light, of love and fear and a shadow's sway that led them all to a darkened day. Raquerle's shadow, it lingers still, it whispered tales of the windswept hill, a warning song through the years and more, of how the heart can wage a war.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are moving a bit beyond the immediate headlines in Daconia writing, and we're looking at the fuel that really set the whole kingdom ablaze. We're going to analyze that long-standing, really deep-seated bad blood between House Raquerle and House Tauphyn. This rivalry, it was so foundational, so explosive, it eventually just blew up into the Antler Wars, a total catastrophe.
Exactly. And the sources we've gathered, they really cut through the noise of just the recent political stuff. This isn't only about the latest succession crisis, not at all. We're actually tracing this conflict back thousands of years. So our mission here is to connect that immediate political mess, the failed marriages, that armed uprising in 455 HKC, connect it right back to the very origins of the Raquerle house. Right. We're talking ancient warrior queens, this almost forgotten story of forbidden elven love, and crucially, one specific huge act of betrayal that poisoned everything for centuries.
Right, and what's fascinating is despite all that ancient history, all those grudges, someone actually tried to fix it. Pretty recently, too. Our story really kicks off in the decades just before the Antler Wars, during King Geir III's reign. His queen, Dionysiva Tauphyn, she was, almost desperate to build some kind of bridge between these houses, and she really focused her energy on befriending Nimhryce Raquerle, who was the Duchess of Opheria, a powerful figure.
Yeah, it was this attempt at, let's say, peace through shared heritage. Dionysiva would seek Nimhryce out, kind of hoping that, shared stories, maybe some companionship, could finally heal these wounds that had just festered over Opheria. She'd even specifically ask Nimhryce about the old hero, Valkyr the Eagle, trying to find common ground in those ancient tales.
But you have to wonder, right, given the sheer weight of all that history, centuries of fighting and exile, was Dionysus just being a bit naive? Could a few friendly chats really undo that kind of, foundational hatred?
The sources hint that she had this stubborn hope, maybe even a desperate one. And when just talking didn't work, she upped the ante. She tried to literally merge the families through her granddaughters. her twin granddaughters?
Yes, the marriages, the ones that didn't end well.
Yeah.
Brictice, the older twin, she was married off to Megan ve Raquerle, who's the son of her friend Shiris. And then the younger twin, Sofrace, she got married to Galen ve Tauphyn, who was actually Dionysus' own grandnephew.
And here's a detail that's subtle but really important: the physical closeness. Both these couples set up their homes in Ophiria, Castle Raquerle for Brictice, at Chequo for Sofrace. And these places, they were only about a day's ride apart. So this wasn't just politics on paper. It was Dionysus trying to force them to be neighbors. Like, literally, making sure that if they were going to fight again, well, they'd practically be doing it over the garden fence.
And as we know, sometimes closeness just makes conflict happen faster. The whole peace effort just shattered, catastrophically. In 455 HKC, that date is absolutely key here. That was the succession crisis. The Tauphyns didn't hesitate. They took up arms immediately. They backed Queen Dionysus' favorite son, Tauphyn, the third son, against the guy everyone knew was the rightful heir, Gered IV. And that move, that ignited the Tauphyn uprising.
The failure was absolute.
Just total.
Sofrace's husband, Galen, he was killed in the fighting. And the Tauphins, driven completely out of Chequo, the very place Dionysus had hoped they'd build their future.
Yeah.
Overnight, they basically became a house without a home, an exiled noble family, you can imagine, right? That loss, that shame, must have instantly flipped Sofrace from potential peacemaker to, well, a very bitter rival.
And feuds like this, they always find the next generation, don't they? So Sofrace, now a widow, exiled, she has a son in 456 HKC, Rolan Tauphyn. He's raised far away in Melicel by their allies, the Chambrases. But then, 6 years later, Brictice, the elder sister, the one who married into the Raquerle house, she gives birth to Raphael, raised safe and sound at Castle Raquerle. So now you've got these two rival cousins, bound by blood but separated by exile and the deepest political divisions imaginable.
Right, and this is where the politics get really, really sharp. King Gered IV dies unexpectedly in 471 HKC. He leaves behind a pregnant widow, Nimhryce. And boom, the succession question explodes all over again. The Chambrases, backing the exiled Tauphyns, they immediately push for Rolan. Their argument: he's the eldest living nephew of the dead king.
But the Raquerles countered hard. They pushed for Raphael. Their argument was that Raphael had the better claim because he was born from the elder twin sister, Brictice, which in their eyes gave him seniority in the bloodline, trumping Rolan just being older. It was like a perfect recipe for a dynastic fight. Complex, messy, guaranteed to cause trouble.
So what stopped it from immediately turning into the Antler Wars right then? Well, it was the birth of a mare, Gered IV's son, born after his father's death. He basically put both Roland's and Raphael's claims on hold, temporarily. But that peace was so fragile, it was just a stopgap, really. It only lasted until 484 HKC, until the Cipher Crisis. Yeah. And that crisis, that was the official start of the Antler Wars. It just goes to show, that underlying Raquerle-Tauphyn rivalry was so poisonous, only having a king on the throne, even a baby one, could keep a lid on it. Okay, so we've got the immediate sparks, the recent history. Now let's go deeper. Why this absolutely unrelenting hatred, this deep-seated enmity? We really have to trace it back to the literal, almost mythical origins of the Raquerles and the founding of Ophiria itself.
Right. We start with a figure named Brol, a warrior. He's saved by this elven warrior queen, Lasarai of Kais, Kyriaden, and yes, the sources say she rode unicorns. So Brol finds safety there, but then he breaks the ultimate rule, forbidden love, with Illyris, who was the daughter of Thule, the gardener, an elf.
And the result wasn't some fairy tale romance, was it? It was basically the birth of this, permanently exiled, self-sufficient warrior culture. Because when their secret relationship, this 9-day union, was discovered, the punishment was just brutal.
Devastating.
Yeah.
Brol's heart was literally ripped out and planted in the earth. And Illyris, pregnant with his child, was banished, cast out completely. So she flees north, she gives birth to a daughter, Raquerle. And she doesn't just raise her, she arms her, trains her in warfare. Raquerle then leads this first group of Stideni, these warrior women, and they eventually settle in the valley of Beethrian. This is the absolute root of that warrior tradition. Raquerle eventually has 9 daughters herself, and one of them, Ulferis, is the one who founds the land of Ophiria around Lake Philion.
And this origin story, it sets up a unique cultural pattern that's absolutely crucial for understanding the Raquerles, right? Ophiria, founded by warrior women, was always short on men. That's a key fact. And this scarcity forced them into trade with the neighboring Gwenandoran. They traded for metals, yeah, but also, the sources explicitly say, for the seed of men, just to keep their line going.
Exactly. And that necessity, combined with their territory, led to centuries of war with the Daconians next door. This was finally settled by the Ryden Treaty, which was, well, brutal but incredibly practical. And this treaty really explains the permanent military nature of the Raquerles' house. Any male children born to the Ophirian warrior women, they were sent to Daconia, but the female children, they were raised as Ophirian warriors, as Skydenai.
So this treaty, it wasn't just about ending a war. It was basically a system designed to guarantee the Raquerles would always be a militarized society and always somewhat separate culturally because they were structured for war by necessity, a completely different setup from the rest of the kingdom.
Precisely. But even with that fierce warrior tradition established, what's the specific historical wound? The thing that directly ties this ancient line to the Tauphyns. We need that exact moment of betrayal.
Oh.
The one that festered.
Okay, that takes us to the second exodus of House Raquerle. This is around the 270s HKC. Queen Nimhryce ve Raquerle, she'd been fighting to basically hold the Daconia kingdom together, restore its integrity, but she was betrayed by one of her own vassals.
And the sources are chillingly specific about who it was. Queen Nimhryce was betrayed by Duke Golian Tauphyn of Echekwa, her own vassal. Duke Golian turned on his queen, handed her over to her enemies, led her to her ruin, and this forced the Raquerles into exile. Again.
Okay, let's just pause on the significance of that for a second. The house that betrayed Queen Nimhryce, causing the second Raquerle exile, was House Tauphyn, and the duke responsible held the title Duke of Echekwa.
This is it. This is the historical anchor for that deep-seated hatred. The Tauphyn line committed the ultimate betrayal against the Raquerles centuries ago, and they did it from Echekwa. So the irony, the really bitter irony, is that when the succession crisis erupted in 455 HKC, the Tauphyns themselves were kicked out of Echekwa. You can bet the Raquerles saw that Tauphyn uprising and their subsequent exile as well as karma, as finally settling a score that was over 2 centuries old.
Wow, that connection is incredibly powerful. It means the Antler Wars weren't just some random political flare-up. They were maybe the unavoidable final act of this historical debt. Okay, let's pivot then. Let's look at the Raquerles themselves leading up to the wars around 484 HKC. What kind of people, what kind of political and cultural force did this long, unique, often brutal history create?
Well, they were really defined by their structure, their traditions, and yeah, those ancient stones. Their main seat, Castle Raquerle, it sat up on this broad hill, built right around an ancient elven stone circle, physically anchoring them to their mythical past. And their system of governance, it was highly structured, clearly designed to stop any one person from getting too much power.
Tell us more about that leadership rotation, the 3 years, 3 months, 3 days thing.
Yeah, that wasn't just some quirky tradition. It was like brilliant political engineering.
Yeah.
The counties within Opheria were given to marquesses, but only for that very specific short term. This system constantly circulated power. It stopped any single marquess from building up too much regional loyalty or a long-term power base. It forced all the real loyalty back to the Central Council of Elders and ultimately the Duchess.
And this Council of Elders who was on it?
9 men and 9 women, which is pretty remarkable for the time, right? It suggests the Raquerles were way ahead of the curve on gender equality compared to the rest of Daconia Riding. Though you could argue it was just pragmatic, given how much they relied on the Skydenai, the warrior women. They also had this library. Modest in size, maybe 400 books and scrolls, but it was priceless because it held these incredibly rare texts from the 1st and 2nd centuries. Foundational knowledge, stuff the rest of the kingdom had likely forgotten. It meant the Raquerles could literally back up their claims to ancient lineage and history in ways others couldn't.
And culturally, they stood out too, even physically, right? Tall, slender, those distinct emerald green eyes and that fiery red hair, a marker of their supposed elven heritage. And they had these very specific rules about food. No pork, no horse meat, unlike their neighbors, the Liori. Plus, they brewed this potent mead, made from beech sap, honey, and milk. Sounds intense.
It definitely sounds potent. But maybe the real core of their culture, the thing that shaped them most, was how they raised their children. It was communal, all nurtured together at Castle Raquerle. And crucially, boys and girls got exactly the same education, equal instruction in everything. We're talking dance, swordplay, archery, astrology, herbology, lore, theology, math, music, the works.
So they weren't just churning out soldiers, they were creating these highly capable, kind of interchangeable leaders, ready for governance and warfare, educated for holistic leadership, really, ensuring every Raquerle, man or woman, could contribute at the highest levels, politically and militarily.
And they absolutely had the military power to back that up. When the Antler Wars kicked off in 494 HKC, House Raquerle could put a standing army of 4,400 troops in the field. And what's really key, tactically speaking, is the makeup of that force.
Yeah.
2,400 cavalry. That's huge. Dramatically more cavalry than infantry.
Which makes them incredibly fast, mobile, and devastating in a charge. And that cavalry force included 500 of those elite Skydeni warrior women, plus 200 heavily armored knights. Their infantry wasn't negligible either, though. 1,200 archers using those famous Torlani longbows. Suggests they valued ranged attacks and quick maneuvers, too.
Right, and when you think about Ophiria's total population estimated around 500,000 at the end of the 5th century HKC, having a standing army of 4,400, plus the ability to call up thousands more in militia, it meant the Raquerles weren't just another noble house. They were essentially a highly concentrated, fiercely independent military state operating within the kingdom. They brought terrifying force to the conflict.
Okay, so let's shoot and pull all these threads together. What this deep dive shows us is that the Antler Wars weren't just, a simple argument over who gets a crown. It was really the explosive, maybe unavoidable, final collision between this millennia-old house, the Raquerles, defined by their unique culture, their warrior women, their ancient elven roots, clashing head-on with the descendants of the Tauphyn line, the very line historically responsible for their near destruction. And all of them, tangled together, brought dangerously close by Queen Dionysus' grand but ultimately doomed attempt at peace.
It really does all circle back to that legacy of betrayal.
Yeah.
And the power of bloodlines, right?
Absolutely. That conflict simmering between Rolan, the older nephew, backed by the Chambrois, and Raphael, born of the elder sister, backed by the Raquerles. It was only paused by young King Amer. Now that the Cipher Crisis has unleashed the Antler Wars, the Raquerles aren't just fighting for Raphael's claim. They're fighting to finally settle that centuries-old score, the one dating back to Duke Golian of Echequa's treachery. So the big question we have to leave you with is, which claim will ultimately win out? Roland's claim based on age, or Raphael's based on the elder sister's line, especially when faced with the sheer military power of Castle Raquerle.
And maybe an even starker question. What's the cost going to be? How many of those 500 elite Skaldeni warriors, how many lives across Daconia Ryden will this final bloody reckoning consume? Before that ancient betrayal is either avenged or somehow finally put to rest, that's the terrible price, of ancient blood feuds in politics.
In the dawn of time, when shadows stretched around, beneath the northern stars where the wind sang strong, a house was born in the greenest of lands, with legends entwined like a shifting sands. O house Raquerle, with a tale to tell of warriors, queens, and the ancient spell. In the farthest north where darkness does creep, roll the warrior through the wilderness to leap. Hunted by shadows, by beasts of the night, yet found by Raquerle in armor so bright. To the elven halls where the trees glowed fair, he was brought to rest and to love's sweet snare. Nimhryce the fierce with her bow of yew, bound broad with vines and a bond so true. Oh, the hills of Ophiria verdant and fair, where brooks do weep in a soft summer air. Gold with maids like silver stream, and flowers bloom in a fragrant dream, on Philian shores where solstice fires gleam. By the mounds of queens we dream, we dream. From that forbidden love a daughter was born. Right is the warrior in the wild lands forlorn. She rode with the sky knight fierce and bold, tamed the wild horses in the meadows of gold. Ophiria's her child with venture south, found Ophiria where green hills mount. Springs of life and streams that wind, a land so blessed by fate, so kind. Oh, the hills of Ophiria verdant and fair, where brooks do weep in the soft summer air. Flows with maids like silver stream, and flowers bloom in a fragrant dream, on Philian shores where solstice fires gleam. By the mounds of queens we dream, we dream. Darkland's line and the Ophir seed, in endless war they sowed their creed. Yet through the strife a pact was made by Rin's feast, where debts were paid. Queen and king in solstice dance, bound by fate in love's long trance. When darkness came to Terra's might, the Raquerles stood, they held the light. Thomas the queen with wisdom crowned, in Castle Raquerle, where honor is found. Pikes bells gold, a peace they forged, but raiders came and wars were gorged. The die-free lords with steel and fire, drove the Raquerles from their pyre. Oh, the hills of Etheria, verdant and fair, where brooks do weep in a soft summer air. Falls with mains like silver stream, and flowers bloom in a fragrant tree. Unfeeling shores where solstice fires gleam, by the mounds of queens we dream. Yet House Raquerle, though driven far, in Ridden's land they watch the star. The ancient flame of Etheria's light burned in their hearts through endless night. The rabbits rose with a young and bold, by sword and fire their land retold. Now the Raquerles reign in Castle Tall, in Etheria's heart where legends call. 9,000 years or so they say have passed since righteous led the way. Through blood and steel, through love and woe, the tale of House Raquerle doth grow. The oldest house in Daconia land, with Etheria's beauty forever at hand. Oh, the hills of Etheria, verdant and fair, where brooks do weep in a soft summer air. Falls with mains like silver stream, and flowers bloom in a fragrant tree. Unfeeling shores where solstice fires gleam, by the mounds of queens we dream. Oh, House Raquerle, may your tale be sung, as long as the stars in the heavens are hung.
Okay, we are jumping right into a conflict that really shaped centuries of Daconian history. We're talking about the unforgiving generational blood feud between House Raquerle and House Tauphyn. This isn't just complex, it's seriously brutal.
It really is. And, the listener who sent these sources over gave us a massive stack here. It details everything from, mythical lineage all the way to assassination plots. So I think our mission is pretty clear.
Yeah.
We need to unpack these competing origin stories, the really deep cultural divides, and, frankly, the deadly treachery that fueled this whole war.
Yeah.
Especially focusing on who really controls the Asheli region. That's key.
And if you dig into the source material, it's obvious this is so much more than just a land dispute. It feels like a clash of fundamental beliefs about, where power even comes from.
Absolutely. On one side, you've got the Raquerles. They're this ancient, sprawling matriarchal dynasty claiming 9,000 years of history, descent from warrior queens, even elven kings. Their whole power base is blood and myth.
The old guard.
Exactly. And then you have the Tauphyns, almost the perfect foil. An upstart house started outside the nobility, rose up through the artisan caste, and built their entire claim on, let's be honest, opportunistic betrayal and just sheer self-made strength. The core issue is legitimacy, isn't it?
Definitely. So let's start with House Tauphyn, the upstarts. Their origins seem deliberately messy, almost. You've got two totally different stories floating around. And the fact that there are conflicting narratives, that tells you a lot about their maybe fragile standing, right?
It really does. I mean, there are those dark whispers, the stories their enemies love to push, that they descend from the Tauphyn or the Dializzi Black Knights, those brutal remnants from the Western Arcanate's fallow years.
Legacy of violence.
Right. And it's something the Tauphins publicly deny, and so do the surviving Tauphyns over in Leor, by the way.
But their official story, the one they promote, it's almost as controversial for a noble house, isn't it? Claiming descent from an amatinero, an artisan.
Exactly. A humble blacksmith named Tauphyn. Even when they're claiming nobility, they admit they come from the Kilniari, the artisan caste. But what's really crucial here is the context of Tauphyn's arrival.
Okay.
He shows up in the capital, Chrysos, around 221 HKC, that's the historical king's calendar, described as this large man, elevated quickly by King Valcaire I right after the conquest of pagan Ephyria.
And even though he gets this count title, the sources really emphasize he was still seen mostly as an amatinero socially.
Yeah.
So what was the reward Valcaire gave him? It feels like it had to be a big political statement.
Oh, it was the ultimate political slap in the face to the old establishment. Valcaire granted Tauphyn the Esheli region, specifically a really strategic hill fort on Acheka,
And why is that so important?
because that land belonged to the Raquerles. Valcaire wasn't just rewarding some artisan, he was deliberately planting a rival, a man of steel and sweat, not blood and Nimhryce in the ancient heartland of Raquerle power.
Wow. So the feud literally starts on day one.
Pretty much, yeah. And the house name itself gets formalized pretty quickly. It was Tauphyn's grandson, Golion, who first claimed the official noble name Tauphyn just about a decade later, 232 HKC.
Okay, so for about 30 years, the sources say the Tauphyns were technically vassals to the Raquerles. That sounds tense. A subordinate role that must have really chafed.
You'd think so.
How did that uneasy setup finally just snap?
It snapped spectacularly at the Battle of Quaella. This is really where the Tauphyns make their bones through pure, unapologetic treachery. Golion just switches allegiance mid-battle.
No kidding.
Yep. Joins Raquerle, who history remembers as the monstrous queen, and boom, this elevates the Tauphyn straight into the high nobility. They get the title Dukes of Ophiria, way more autonomy.
That single move defines the entire house, doesn't it? It's like their birth certificate into the upper ranks. What was Golion's public excuse for betraying his liege lords so brazenly?
Well, Golion claimed he was bound by honor, if you can believe it. Said he had to rebel because the Raquerles hadn't fully embraced the Tarosi faith, the main religion.
Convenient theology.
Right. Whether he genuinely cared about religion or was just masking raw opportunism, well, that's up for debate. But what's not debatable is the actual cost of that decision on the ground.
Yeah, the sources paint a devastating picture. The human toll was catastrophic. We're not talking minor border clashes here.
No.
Because of the constant Raquerle incursions trying to get their land back, plus all the internal Tauphyn fighting, Ophiria's population just plummeted from 300,000 down to 220,000 people.
That's almost a third of the entire region wiped out over decades.
Yeah.
It shows this wasn't just political maneuvering. The inherited pride of both the Raquerle matriarchs and these newly arrogant Tauphyn dukes, it translated directly into economic ruin and demographic collapse for the people they ruled.
And to really get the scale of Golion's betrayal, you have to understand what the Raquerles represented. They were the ultimate establishment, right? This matriarchy of warrior queens.
With their famous Skadnai horse archers. Fearsome.
Exactly. And their claims weren't just based on recent history. They genuinely believed they had 9,000 years of inheritance behind them.
They absolutely did. Their lineage supposedly goes back to figures like the warrior maid Raquerle and her elven mother, Illyris. So from the Raquerle point of view, the Tauphyns weren't just rivals. They were vassals and traitors.
Usurpers.
Basically, yeah. People who rose only by deceit, lacking any true sovereignty. Just a temporary nuisance, exiled twice, but always crawling back to claim what the Raquerle saw as their birthright.
That fundamental clash of values really comes through in the Tauphyn culture itself. They got that nickname, the Forgers of Steel. It seems like their whole culture was designed to be the polar opposite of the Raquerles' ancient, maybe more refined identity.
It's all about projecting that self-made power. We look at their crest. 2 sledgehammers crossed on a black anvil on a red field. Every single Tauphyn son has to fashion his own blade. They prioritize infantry combat, not the usual noble focus on cavalry.
Yeah.
And they wear scars, they call them the Kiss of Steel, like badges of honor.
And the sources mention some incredibly harsh customs, too. Like they shave your heads completely.
They do. The thinking is that long hair softens the spirit, and maybe more practically, it avoids lice in the barracks. It's all about being unsoftened by any kind of comfort. But it's their behavioral code that really sets them apart from typical nobility.
That notorious thing about never apologizing.
Exactly. For a Tauphyn, it's apparently shameful to offer contrition or express regret. If you accuse them of doing something wrong, their standard response is basically a challenge. If you think we wronged you, why aren't you trying to destroy us in a war?
Wow. That's direct.
And it's drilled into them from childhood. Kids are punished without explanation, just action. It fosters this unquestioning obedience over any kind of reflection or, God forbid, apology.
And the irony is, for a house that clearly needed to be strategically clever to rise the way they did, they seem to have had this active anti-intellectual streak.
It's bizarre, isn't it? They limited formal instruction just twice a week for theology, lore, math. They genuinely believe too much learning slows their reflexes and dulls their wits. Their motto kind of sums it up. One doth not cleanse oneself before the deed is done. It's pure action over thinking about it first.
We also have to touch on the darker side of that really hyper-masculine culture, especially how women were treated. The sources highlight it as a kind of rigid internal control mechanism.
Yeah, it's extreme.
Yeah.
Daughters were seen primarily as tools for alliances or, for bearing sons to fight wars. Honor was guarded so fiercely that some women, maidens, and even married ladies were made to wear chastity belts, often made by their own family smiths.
That really shows the level of paranoia, doesn't it, about their fragile honor in a world that constantly questioned their legitimacy.
Absolutely. And the punishment for even suspected dishonor was horrific and very public.
What happened?
A woman suspected of dishonor, even a maidservant, could be shorn, stripped naked, thrown into the barracks for a night, the ultimate public shame, then tarred, feathered, and literally thrown into the waters of Lake Philium. It was a brutal tool to enforce loyalty and fear within the house itself. Shows their paranoia about any outside influence weakening them.
Okay, so after that initial betrayal at Quayle, the feud just settles into this gruesome pattern. Tit-for-tat violence, often using deceit instead of open warfare. What was the first big Raquerle counterpunch?
That would be the death of the original traitor, Golian himself. He was eventually killed in single combat by Raquerle. And the story goes, she used deceit, supposedly cast a viper into his armor.
A viper? Seriously?
That's the tale. Whether true or not, it cemented guile as a primary weapon for both sides from then on.
And the Raquerle certainly showed they were willing to stoop to that level themselves, maybe even surpass it with the Echekwa massacre in 315 HKC.
Oh, that's one of the absolute darkest moments in the feud. The famous Skydonai horse archers, disguised as common courtesans, somehow infiltrated the Tauphyn stronghold at Echekwa.
Disguised as courtesans, that takes nerve.
Incredible nerve. And they didn't just retake the fortress, they massacred 30 male members of House Tauphyn. Just wiped them out. They seized Echekwa back through sheer brutal deception. And that act is what really ignited the final war of the Dark Ages.
The cycle just kept turning. Later on, Golian II Tauphyn gets assassinated in Chrysalis, right? During a supposed time of peace.
More treachery. The Tauphyns were humiliated again, stripped of power, reduced back to vassals. But even in defeat, this is where they find a way to use their core skills.
The blacksmith heritage.
Exactly. That artisan background becomes their saving grace. During the long peace of the 4th century, they turned that humiliation into industry. They used the iron-rich sludge from Lake Philium and the coal from Eckerle to become the main suppliers of Tarlini arrowheads to the Daconian crown. Highly sought after.
So their wealth was quite literally forged in fire. And they used that industrial money to transform Echekwa, didn't they? From just a hill fort into
one of the 3 largest castles in all of Daconia. We're talking 20 smithies, 50 furnaces operating inside. Their money started talking louder than their, commoner origins.
And all this new wealth then leads to attempts at peace, ironically, during the succession crises in the mid-5th century.
Right. Queen Dainsi, who'd actually married into the royal line, King Gear III, she tried to heal the rift. Her big plan was strategic marriages between the 2 houses.
A sensible plan, finally. Unite the granddaughters, Brictus from Raquerle and Nimhryce from Tauphyn, to rival houses, create some bonds.
Look good on paper. But that harmony was incredibly short-lived. It crashed spectacularly during the succession crisis of 455 HKC.
What happened?
The Tauphyns, true to form perhaps, threw their steel and their gold behind the wrong contender. They backed Prince Ithorian against the actual rightful heir, Gear I.
Huge mistake.
Huge mistake. This provocation immediately brought the Raquerles and their allies down hard on the capital.
And the response wasn't just defeat, it was annihilation.
Total annihilation. Prince Ithorian, Queen Daenerys herself, and nearly 50 male members of House Tauphyn were all beheaded in a mass execution. Echekwa was taken back by the Raquerles, and House Tauphyn was, for all intents and purposes, finished as a major noble power.
Just wiped out.
Seemingly. But from that absolute devastation, the sources introduced the next really defining figure, Rolan Tauphyn.
Ah, Rolan.
He was born just months after his grandfather was executed. Raised in exile by another house, the Chambois, he grows up to become this renowned warrior, famous for retaking Scylla Island. He really embodies the sheer stubborn will of the house to survive.
And meanwhile, you've got the Raquerle heir, Raphael, born a few years later. He's the scholar prince of Castle Raquerle. So the rivalry is literally being bred into these 2 fundamentally different young men.
Exactly. But the tide turns again when the ruling queen, Nimhryce, gets impressed by Rolan's military prowess. She intervenes. 23 years after those executions, she pressures the Raquerle Duchess to restore Rolan as Count of Echekwa. That's 479 HKC.
He gets it back. But the man who returns isn't the same old savage Tauphyn archetype, is he?
No, Rolan comes back as this warrior reformer. Between 480 and 493 HKC, he institutes this incredibly severe, merit-based internal cleanup of the house and the lands. He gathers 50 surviving Tauphins, plus this huge workforce like 1,800 disciplined laborers to clear and restore Echekwa Castle and the fields.
And his leadership style was completely different too, right?
Totally different. The sources say he actually worked alongside his own kinsmen in the fields. He set up strict justice, even punished Tauphins who abused servants. No favoritism. And he practiced extreme temperance himself, only drank boiled, cool water.
Wow. What about others?
If you were caught drunk, he'd have you bound to a rowing boat overnight with your legs dangling in the cold Lake Philian waters. Serious discipline.
Okay, so this disciplined, almost puritanical internal renewal brings the house roaring back to strength, but it also sets the stage for the final massive provocation against the Raquerle.
The checkmate move, really. Rolan secretly marries Queen Nimhryce.
The Queen, who is the liege lord of the current Raquerle Duchess Divas.
Precisely. That strategic marriage immediately signals that Rolan's ambitions are way higher than just running Echekwa's furnaces. It throws the Raquerles into immediate alarm, and that directly sets the stage for the catastrophic Antler Wars of 484 HKC.
So when we try to synthesize this huge, sprawling story from the sources, what's the core takeaway? It really feels like a study in legitimacy, doesn't it?
I think it absolutely is. You have the ancient bloodline of the Raquerles who believe power is their birthright, it's inherent, versus the Tauphins who basically argue that true worth has to be forged through your own strength, your loyalty, even if that's often masked by brutality and betrayal.
And the sources make it so clear that both sides constantly use deceit as a core tactic. The Viper, the courtesans, the assassinations. It shows that regardless of their claims to high honor or ancient lineage, both houses were willing to use the lowest methods to keep control of Eshelly.
Hypocrisy runs deep.
Yeah. But what really stands out, especially with Rolan at the end, is that his internal reform, that strict merit-based discipline that literally resurrected his house, it didn't lead to peace. If anything, it just armed their ancient sense of humiliation with a newly focused, dangerous purpose.
A chilling thought.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it? Consider this. What's the ultimate price of that kind of inherited pride when the desire for perpetual war is so deeply ingrained that even self-improvement, even reform, just ends up fueling the next wave of vengeance?
Sons of wars, the king is dead, but the blood still roars. Ophelia still shall be ours once more. In the shadows of Echekwa's walls, we gather under the iron calls. The black stone echoes with our cries to reclaim what the Raquerles despise. Ophelia's hills once ours by right, now darkened by yet another's might. But we will rise with sword and flame to cleanse our land, to stake our claim. Ophelia, our land, our pride. We'll see the Raquerles run and hide. With fire and blood we'll make our stand, and drive them from Ophelia's land. War, war, to our sons of wars. The castles burn, their ashes fly. Ophelia will raise a cry. When the shadows of Echekwa's walls, we gather under iron calls. The black stone echoes with our cries to reclaim what the Raquerles despise. Ophelia's hills once ours by right, now darkened by yet another's might. But we will rise with sword and flame to cleanse our land, to stake our claim. Ophelia, our land, our pride. We'll see the Raquerles run and hide. With fire and blood we'll make our stand, and drive them from Ophelia's land. War, 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 to our sons of wars. The castles burn, their ashes fly. Ophelia will raise our cry. Listen well, you Tauphyn sons. The hills of Ophelia shall soon be won. With each swing of sword and crash of shield, we'll sow the fire and reap the yield. Onward, onward through the night, our battles flying bold and bright. The cries of war, the clashing steel. For Ophelia's freedom we shall not yield. Their walls shall crumble, their spirits break. We'll drive them to the cold dark lake. And when the morning sun does rise, Ophelia's hill shall meet our eyes. Ophelia, Crowned with Tauphyn blood, they shall be crowned. So march my kin and fight with fire. Opheria calls and never tireless. Opheria, 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 Opheria.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into a really intense period, the very first year of the Second Antler War.
Yeah, it's 485 HKC, High King's calendar, and you've got this massive civil war breaking out in Daconia Rhydnen, House Rolan versus House Raphael.
Exactly. And it's brutal from the get-go. What we want to do today, our mission really, is to unpack those first critical alignments, the strategic problems everyone faced, and these really surprising personal vendettas that popped up.
Because it's not straightforward. You look at the sources, Rolan technically has maybe 3 times the troops. But victory wasn't instant. Far from it.
Right. That's the core question, isn't it? Why didn't that huge military advantage just steamroll the opposition immediately? It shows how, sheer numbers aren't always the deciding factor.
Not at all. So let's look at that initial balance of power. Because, like you said, on paper, Rolan seems poised for a quick win.
He's got forces concentrated in Qualis, Lower Threum.
Yep.
They're basically ready to go.
And a lot of them are veterans. We've got the Thryomenes, the Rhydnen archers. These are serious, experienced soldiers. Thrice the number overall, the sources mention.
But then the Raphaelids, under Duchess Divis, they had different kinds of strengths.
They did. Less about sheer numbers, more about specialized units from key duchies. Opheria brought in about, 4,400 troops, mostly horsemen, and crucially, those Skydenai archers.
Ah, the Skydenai. Known for being fast, hard to pin down. Mounted recon, skirmishers.
Exactly. The kingdom's best, really. And then you add Voltai's contribution, around 6,000 troops, mostly medium-armored footmen, good defensive spear units.
So Rolan has the hammer, but Raphael has maybe the scalpel.
That's a good way to put it. Which leads us right into Rolan's big problem, those strategic constraints. He has this massive army, maybe 13,000 just in Qualis alone, but he's stuck.
Stuck how?
Well, first, external threats. Right across the Jane River in Qualis, there are 15,000 West Leori troops. Just watching, waiting.
So if Rolan moves his Qualis army inland for the Civil War...
He invites a full-blown Leori invasion. His biggest force is basically pinned defending the border.
Okay, that's huge. What else?
Internal threats, too. Down in Threum, you've got troll problems. Sounds almost minor, but it tied down thousands of troops needed just to protect villages. He couldn't pull them away either.
So the guy with this supposedly overwhelming army shows up at Chrysalis, the capital, with how many men?
The sources say about 600. Just horsemen and mounted infantry. It's tiny compared to his overall strength.
600. Wow. To take the biggest, richest city, that really highlights how hamstrung he was.
Absolutely. But his objective there was crystal clear. Take Chrysalis and specifically secure the Ulios Cape.
Why the Cape?
Control the navy. We're talking 170 galleys plus all those smaller, faster Uldvaldi ones.
And controlling the navy means controlling the rivers too, right? The Veil system. That's vital for supplies, moving troops.
It's everything in Daconia and Threum. Cut off your enemy's river access. Support your own. The Raphaelids knew this. They couldn't match him head-on immediately, so they went for his wallet.
Ah, the treasury move. They shifted the Daconian treasury out of Chrysalis to Castron, deep in Voltai territory.
Yep. The idea was, well, if we can't pay Roland's troops stuck over in Qualis, maybe they'll just turn on him. Starve his war effort financially.
A pretty smart asymmetric move.
Very. But funny enough, the Raphaelids had their own unity problems right away, that Voltai contingent. About 1,400 of them, good troops.
Yeah.
Instead of reinforcing the main Raphaelid effort near Opheria, they peeled off and went to Lede. Shows the cracks in their alliance even that early.
Okay, so Roland's tied down. The Raphaelids are trying financial warfare, but are a bit fractured. And meanwhile, this whole other drama unfolds in the Isheli region.
Right. This is where Castellan Arlathi Tauphyn comes in. He's got a Chekwa castle in Opheria, maybe 900 men. A small garrison.
And he knows he can't take on Duchess Divis's main army directly.
No way. He needs a diversion. He needs to pull the Raquerle forces Divis's family away from the central fight in Daconia.
And for Arleth, this is personal, isn't it? There's history here.
Oh, deeply personal. The Raquerles kicked his family, the Tauphins, out of Echekwa years ago. Rolan only put him back in charge about 6 years prior in 479, so this campaign, it's payback time for him.
So what does he do? He marches on a Checo town nearby.
15 miles away, yeah. And he uses this light Leori catapult. Sounds a bit old-fashioned, maybe.
But effective.
Brilliantly effective tactically. He smashes the town gate with it. Now, he knows the local militia, led by one of the Raquerles, O'Brien.
They'll charge out to grab the catapult, right?
So
it's valuable.
Exactly. It's the bait. As soon as they charge out O'Brien and maybe 10 cavalrymen leading the militia, Arleth springs the trap.
Which was?
Crossbowmen. Hidden in the woods and brush alongside the road, they just unleash this devastating volley right into the charging militia.
Oof. That must have broken them instantly.
Immediately. Total shock. The assault collapses. The town falls pretty quickly. Arleth loses like 13 men.
And then he does something politically clever.
Very. He gives the 1,200 townsfolk a choice. Stay serfs to the Raquerles or join House Tauphyn. Gets about 160 new recruits right there, consolidating his position.
He keeps going. Takes another town, Nimhryce.
He does, but that costs him a bit more, maybe 37 casualties. But his success obviously gets noticed.
The Raquerles respond.
Yes, Talyrus Ve Raquerle, who is Duchess Divis's daughter, takes command, and she proves pretty capable. She organizes a pincer move using Leor militia along with her own forces.
Putting Arleth in a tight spot.
Very tight. He's forced to pull back, abandon his heavier gear, retreat all the way to a Checo castle.
So tactically, he ends up retreating. But strategically.
Strategically, it's a success. Even in defeat, his small force tied up nearly 2,000 Raquerle troops in that region, troops that could have been reinforcing Divis against Rolan.
He bought Rolan time, valuable time.
Crucial time, which Rolan uses to push forward in Daconia proper. By late spring, Awavery 29th, the Raphaelids actually crown Raphael Ve Raquerle as King Raphael III.
A political countermove. Did they offer terms?
They did, a decree of pardon, trying to undermine Rolan's legitimacy.
Which Rolan promptly ignored, I assume.
Completely. He had around 5,600 warriors by then and was busy laying siege to Paradel, a pretty significant city.
So Divis has to respond to this siege. How does she play it?
This is where Divis shows her strategic thinking. She musters her army, nearly 5,000 Ophirians, plus 1,000 Tarlani bowmen she hired, but she deliberately avoids a direct fight with Rolan's main force.
Why? Afraid of his heavier infantry.
Probably. She knows her strength is mobility, those Skydenai riders, so instead of a battle, she goes after his supplies.
Ah, logistics again.
Exactly. Her sister, Duralis, leads the Skydenai on raids deep into Rolan's rear, hitting towns like Grail, Scapacoti, Isla Sol, cutting his supply lines back towards Chrysalis.
Starving the siege?
Precisely. It works. Rolan is forced to lift the siege of Paradel, a major win for Divis without risking her main army.
But Rolan doesn't just retreat, does he? He makes a move.
He does. He shows some tactical smarts himself. Instead of falling back towards his supplies, he pivots west towards Verbosi. This threatens to cut off Divis's own line of retreat.
Forcing her hand, leading to the Battle of Dorgasti.
Exactly. July 12th, 485. And you have to remember, for Rolan, this is huge. This is personal.
Because Divis.
Divis killed his father. 30 years before, in 455. This battle isn't just strategy, it's vengeance for him.
High stakes. Divis still has the cavalry advantage with the Skydenai, right?
She does. They rely on that quick volley and retreat style. But Rolan seems to have really studied the ground at Dorgasti.
How so?
The area is apparently crisscrossed with little brooks and ditches, not great for fast cavalry maneuvers. Rolan uses this.
He sets a trap for the cavalry.
Sort of, yeah. He hides crossbowmen in good positions, but the clever part is he apparently puts some of his knights, dismounted perhaps, inside barns near the likely paths.
Concealed knights.
Yeah. The idea seems to have been to disrupt the Skydenai flow, maybe draw them into the open fields where his infantry could engage, preventing their usual hit-and-run tactics.
And it worked.
It seems so. The sources say Rolan lost about 900 men, but the Raphaelids lost 1,300, killed or captured. Divis was forced to retreat.
Leaving Verbosi, the key route to the capital, open to Rolan. A big victory.
A tactical victory, absolutely, but what follows shows just how vicious this war had become.
The aftermath in Paradel and Raquerle.
Yes. After securing the area, Rolan enacts this truly horrific revenge. He targets the Emittiniari City Council and Raquerle.
Why them specifically?
Vengeance for his kinswoman, Varlis Tauphina. She had been beheaded there earlier. So Rolan orders the entire council, hanged upside down in the city walls.
Hanged upside down.
And then used for target practice by his crossbowmen. It's just brutal. Shows the cycle of personal hatred driving things now, beyond just the claim to the throne.
A grim turn. And this victory at Dorgasti, despite its importance, didn't quite solidify things for Rolan, did it? Something else happened almost immediately.
Right. The victory almost instantly evaporated. Rolan couldn't follow up effectively because a large chunk of his army, the contingent from Nimhryce, had to suddenly leave.
Why? What happened?
Trouble back home. Lord Andrek Dorizan, he's the Duke of Voltai's brother, launched a counter-invasion into Nimhryce with about 3,000 Voltaic troops.
So while Rolan is fighting Divas, the Voltanes open another front.
Exactly. A classic diversionary invasion. And it was devastatingly effective. They moved fast, took Peripes, Tragihuri, laid siege to Pael.
And the sources mention particular cruelty.
Yes, specifically targeting the ruling families there, the Amatiniari and Kilniari. It wasn't just conquest, it was terror. Homes looted and burned.
And the executions.
Appalling. They hanged men alongside their entire families, wives, children, siblings right at the town gates. A deliberate message. Submit or face annihilation.
That level of brutality, it must have had an effect.
It did. There's this tragic story of Brennan Vicaridor. He commanded Farsiteri, a city of 8,000 people. He surrendered because he heard a false rumor his family had been captured.
He surrendered to save them.
Yes, but the Voltanes were furious he hadn't surrendered earlier, so they hanged him anyway. It just shows the absolute ruthlessness.
And strategically, this invasion forced the Duke of Nimhryce.
Duke Arthur, yeah. He had no choice. He had to recall his son, Ursiolain, from Qualis. Ursiolain was commanding maybe half of Roland's best knights up there?
Half his knights. Pulled away right after Dorgasti.
Yes. A massive blow to Roland's offensive capability for the rest of the year. Ursiolain did manage to break the siege of Pael and push back a bit, but the Voltanes, with their mobile-mounted crossbowmen, just dragged the fight out. It became this grinding, attritional conflict in Nimhryce that lasted through the winter.
So, end of the year, 485 HKC. Where do things stand?
It's tense. Roland has secured the neck of land leading to Chrysalis, which is strategically important. But Nimhryce is a disaster zone, vulnerable, and his best cavalry is tied up there. The momentum from Dorgasti is gone.
It's basically a stalemate, but a really bloody and unstable one.
Completely. The whole year is this balancing act. Roland's huge army is effectively neutralized by the Leori threat and the troll patrols. Every success gets countered or complicated by personal vendettas like Arlyth's, or Roland's own thirst for revenge, or these brutal side invasions like the one in Nimhryce.
It really underscores how raw numbers meant so little when faced with these complex realities. We started asking why Roland didn't win quickly.
And the answer seems to be a mix of external threats keeping his main force sidelined, and these internal conflicts and vendettas constantly diverting resources and escalating the brutality.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listener, to consider, building on that external threat idea. The sources are pretty clear. The West Leori, sitting over there in Qualis, they actively refused any peace talks during this period.
Right. They were led by Kervi Tosli at the time, and their big fear. If Roland actually won the Civil War.
He'd immediately turn his attention back to Qualis and kick them out, taking back the territory they held.
Exactly. So here's the question to chew on. Knowing how much the Voltaic invasion of Nimhryce crippled Roland by pulling away his knights, how much did that constant simmering threat from the foreign war that never fully erupted but always threatened, how much did that ultimately dictate the strategy, the troop allocations, and maybe even the final outcome of this whole civil war?
A really crucial point. How much did the war next door shape the war at home? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into 485 HKC.
Yeah, fascinating year.
We'll see you next time on the Deep Dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're opening up some really fascinating sources. They cover one of the most, destructive conflicts in the history of the Union Kingdom of Daconia Raiden.
The Antler Wars.
Exactly, the Antler Wars. And this is really a story about how a feud just between two families, House Tauphyn and House Raquerle, basically tore an entire kingdom apart.
Yeah, and what's striking is that it wasn't really about grand political ideas. Our sources, which are incredibly detailed, almost day-by-day chronicles.
Military and political.
Military and political, yes. They show it was driven by like 3 decades of pure, relentless, personal vengeance. Grievances just festered.
Tactical mistakes became these huge points of horrific retaliation. It just spiraled.
It really did. From a simple skirmish, arguably, into just devastating civil war.
So our mission for you today is to trace that exact cycle. How did trying to settle one score just inevitably lead to the next bigger, bloodier one, right up to the Second Antler War?
And you have to start at the beginning, the root cause. It's this moment back in 455 HKC.
Not some glorious battle either.
No, not at all. It was, well, a shambles. Caldavir's March, a piece of almost unbelievable military incompetence.
Tell us about that. The sources paint quite a picture, don't they?
Oh, absolutely. Caldavir v. Tauphyn sets out from Echekwa. He has 853 men. The idea: to relieve King Tauphyn.
Okay, sounds standard enough.
Except the planning was, well, non-existent. They march in full armor.
Full armor.
In the worst heat of midsummer. And they've got almost no provisions, barely any water.
That's not bad planning. That's suicidal. You don't need an enemy?
Precisely. The sun and thirst were enemies enough. They were basically defeated before they even got near a fight.
So what happens when they actually reach somewhere? Krezmir, right?
They get to Krezmir, and the citizens know the Tauphyn reputation. They just slam the gate shut, won't let them in.
Wow. So Lofair's stuck outside with thirsty, hungry, probably angry troops.
Exactly. He has no choice. He orders them to disperse for, quote, requisition.
Ah, the official term for looting.
Pretty much. And it immediately collapses into just drunken, uncontrolled pillaging and abuse in all the nearby villages. Discipline. Gone. Completely evaporated.
Okay, so chaos reigns. And this leads directly to the real flashpoint, doesn't it? Galen's blunder.
Yes, Galen. He's leading the vanguard, the front part of the force, and he gets completely lost. Takes a wrong turn.
Ends up where?
He ends up at a town called Tassi. But somehow, in his probably heat-stroked, panicked state, he convinces himself he's looking at the capital city, Chrysalis.
He mistakes Tassi for Chrysalis. How?
It's almost incomprehensible. He sees lights, people gathered. The sources say it was actually a wedding feast.
A wedding?
Yes. But Galen sees a rebel gathering. He panics, orders a charge.
Into a wedding party? Oh, no.
Chaos ensues. And in the middle of it all, he burns down this domed shrine thinking it's the great basilica in Chrysalis.
My goodness.
When he finally realizes his catastrophic mistake, he orders this frantic night march to get away, just making everything worse. Logistics completely failed.
So now you've got this vanguard, scattered, undisciplined, exhausted, probably terrified, running away.
And that's when they run into real trouble. Trouble they can't just bully or loot their way out of.
Who intercepts them?
As Galen's infantry, totally strung out, are heading towards Cali, they're hit by Skydenai horse archers. Very fast, very mobile.
Led by?
Led by a 15-year-old girl, Divis ver Raquerle.
15. Already leading troops.
And already showing incredible tactical sense. She uses the speed of her horse archers perfectly. Harries Galen's disorganized infantry, picks them off, kills about 38 Tauphyns near Dinuan Bridge.
Okay, 38 isn't a huge number in the grand scheme of things.
But it's not the number that matters here.
Right.
It's who died. Galen himself, the leader of the vanguard.
And this is the moment. This is where the feud gets personal and the histories diverge, right?
Absolutely. This is the seed, the Raquerle version. It's heroic if brutal. Diaz is unhorsed, she pretends to be dead, then she manages to wound Galen in combat, face-to-face, and beheads him.
And the Tauphyn version.
Treacherous murder. They claim she killed him under a flag of truce, stabbed him in the back, essentially.
Does it even matter which version is true?
For history, maybe? For the feud? No. What mattered was Galen v. Tauphyn was dead, beheaded, specifically by Givis v. Raquerle. That act, that very personal, very bloody act of vengeance. That's what festered for 30 years.
30 years, until 485 HKC.
Yes. The First Antler War is essentially that skirmish and its fallout. Now, jump forward 3 decades and the Second Antler War erupts. The initial screw-up is maybe forgotten, but the hatred isn't.
And now it's about the throne itself. Who are the main players in 485?
You've got Roland to Tauphyn, Galen's heir, presumably carrying that vengeance, and Raphael v. Roquer.
How do they stack up initially, force-wise?
Well, Roland, the Tauphyn claimant, seems to have the edge in quality. He commands veterans, maybe 3 times Raphael's initial numbers.
There's always a bug.
His forces are stretched really thin. He's already fighting wars on other fronts against the Liori, against trolls, constant drain.
And Raphael?
Raphael has potential numbers. Ophirian cavalry, Voltai infantry, maybe 10,000 men on paper. But they're scattered all over, disorganized, not a cohesive army yet.
So Roland strikes fast.
He does. Grabs the capital, Chrysalis, secures the fleet. then pushes northwest, starts besieging Paradel. Early momentum is his.
And he uses his family effectively too, right? Like Arlaith Tauphyn?
Yes, Castel and Arlaith, operating out of Echekwa. He doesn't win huge pitched battles, but he conducts these constant raids. His job is basically to be a massive nuisance.
Tying down enemy troops.
Exactly. He pins down thousands of Ophirian troops that Raphael desperately needs elsewhere. Now, he is eventually checked by Tolliar's Fay Raquerle.
Davis's daughter.
Davis's daughter, yes. But Arlaith achieves his goal, preventing those forces from reinforcing Raphael. It's smart attritional warfare.
Okay, so nuisances aside, when does the first major clash happen?
That would be the Battle of Gorgasti, July 485. This is a big one.
Davis is involved again.
Very much so. Now, Duchess of Ophiria, a seasoned commander, she tries to use her Skydenize speed to outflank Rolan near the Sapi River, break his infantry lines.
But Roland's ready.
He anticipates it completely. He sets a trap using his disciplined infantry, hiding crossbowmen. The Skydenize ride right into it.
Ouch. Losses.
Heavy for Raphael's side. Around 1,300 killed. Rolan loses maybe 900. But the key thing isn't just the numbers.
What's the strategic impact?
It opens up the whole region of Verbosi to Rolan, and he marches in and unleashes just brutal vengeance on any town or council that had supported Raphael.
So it's already shifting, not just about winning territory, but punishing dissent.
Absolutely, collective punishment. But Roland's momentum doesn't last. By the end of 485, things stall. Not because Raphael suddenly gets stronger, but because the kingdom itself is fracturing.
How so?
The Voltanes, who are technically Raphael's allies, invade Lefry's Diaphrys. This forces Duke Arthur, one of Roland's key allies, to recall his son Orsiolain.
Taking troops with him?
Taking half of Roland's cavalry. A huge blow. So the year ends with Daconia basically split down the middle, both sides bleeding, and things are set for, well, an even messier 486.
Right, 486 HKC. And the politics get incredibly tangled here, don't they? This whole treasury dispute.
It's fascinatingly complex. You have Marshal Arthur Chamboise. He's fighting for Roland, remember. He needs money to pay his troops.
Okay.
But the royal treasury is technically Raphael's. And it's controlled by Duke Robrek de Werzin of Voltaire, who is Raphael's main ally, and whose people just invaded territory loyal to Roland.
So Roland's general needs money from his enemy's ally. How does that even work?
Sheer necessity. You see, Roland's army, including Arthur's troops, wasn't just fighting Raphael. They were also fighting off that Liori invasion in the north.
Ah, the external threat again.
Right. If Roland's northern army collapsed because they weren't paid, the Liori could sweep south. Raphael couldn't afford that any more than Roland could. So, incredibly, Raphael is forced to find a way to get funds to his enemy's general.
To fight his other enemy.
Wow, it's Byzantine. And the price Raphael pays for this, it's huge.
What does he give up?
To get Robrek Dorzin of Voltaire to release the funds, Raphael has to grant the Voltanes a massive chunk of fertile land between the Green and Red Veil rivers, basically shrinks his own power base.
That's a big concession. But there was more, wasn't there? Something personal.
Yes, the political cost. To seal this deal, Raphael agrees to be betrothed to Robrek's daughter, Crelis.
Okay. How old is she?
9.
9 years old. And this creates another problem.
A huge one, because Crelis was already betrothed to one of Raphael's own rising commanders, a man named Carthoar Fafai.
So Raphael breaks off his own commander's engagement to secure this alliance? That sounds dangerous. Risky.
Extremely risky. It's a massive personal slight to Carthoar. How do they smooth it over? They make Carthoar a colonel. Promote him.
A promotion in exchange for having his betrothal publicly dissolved. I bet that went down well.
He accepted it. But you just know that resentment is simmering there. It's a political debt, a personal wound. That's going to fester. Raphael gets the money, keeps the northern front patched up, but he's created a vulnerability right inside his own command.
And it seems like as soon as that deal is struck, the gloves come off entirely. The war turns even nastier.
Unbelievably nasty. Roland captures the city of Raphi. His army loots it, predictably. But then comes the vengeance against the Ranisfi Raquerle.
Divis's aunt, right?
Divis's aunt. What happens to her and her daughters?
Wow.
It's detailed in the sources, and it's genuinely chilling.
Tell us.
They're captured. Stripped naked in the freezing cold, publicly humiliated, smeared with tar and feathers.
Okay, that's brutal psychological warfare.
It gets worse. They insert hooks through their ankles, drag them under the river ice until they drown or die of exposure.
My God.
And then their mutilated heads are sent to Kresmir as a message.
A message aimed directly at Divis. Is this tactical terror or just sheer spite?
It feels like pure, calculated personal cruelty, aimed straight at Divis. hitting her family. It's about inflicting maximum emotional pain on the Raquerle leadership.
And Divis? Does she retaliate?
Immediately. In kind. She captures Roland's cousin, Voltrade v. Tauphyn, and 2 other Tauphyn knights. Has them gelded, then hanged.
A literal eye for an eye. Or worse.
But this highlights the tension in the Raquerle camp too, because Raphael apparently ordered that sentence rescinded almost immediately. Too late, of course. It shows Divis is operating on her own thirst for vengeance, sometimes outside Raphael's direct control.
Meanwhile, Raphael's new allies, the Voltanes, are adding their own brand of brutality.
Yes, flush with their new lands and paid mercenaries. Ilvaldi mercenaries bribed with 5 gold coins each, the sources note.
5 gold coins, that's specific.
It is. They stormed the city of Trajetulsi in 487 HKC.
And it's not just a capture, is it? It's a massacre.
A full-blown massacre. Around 3,000 Lephrosines killed, including the entire city council.
And the method.
Appalling symbolic cruelty. They pile wood around the main basilica, where people sought refuge, and set it alight, not necessarily to burn it down instantly, but to fill it with smoke, choking people, cooking them alive inside.
While people watched from across the river.
Yes, in Tassi, a mile away across the water, citizens watched this huge column of crimson smoke rising. A terrifying spectacle. A clear message. This wasn't about conquest anymore. It was about annihilation.
Unthinkable levels of brutality. Does anyone try to stop it? Raphael tries for peace again, doesn't he? In 487.
He does. He makes an offer. He'll abdicate if Roland also abdicates. He even suggests neutral third party, an officer named Raquerle and Rolan, who is actually in Roland's army.
And what happens to Raquerle?
Predictably. He's killed very shortly after the suggestion is made. No one trusts anyone.
So peace fails. What then?
Propaganda war. Full throttle. With reconciliation impossible, they just try to demonize each other.
What kind of accusations?
The Rolanids call Raphael a pagan. They say he steals boys for sacrificial rituals or for alchemy. Just wild stuff.
And the Raphaelids?
They paint Roland as an actual fiend, drinks the blood of his enemies, and digging the knife in, they accuse him of personally defiling Theranos' corpse after her murder.
Just pure visceral hatred, making any kind of settlement impossible.
Utterly impossible. Which leads us to the next major battle. Daily.
Roland tries a maneuver.
An outflanking move, yeah. That's a close run thing. Then Nimhryce, Divis' daughter, arrives with Raquerle reinforcements. The tide might turn.
But this is where that old political debt comes due, isn't it?
This is the moment. Remember Cartoir Fakai, the colonel whose betrothal Raphael broke.
The one compensated with a promotion.
That guy. At this absolutely critical moment in the battle, he switches sides, turns his forces, and hits Roland's right flank.
Betrayal on the battlefield.
Exactly. Turns a potential victory for Roland into a rout. Roland is forced to yield the field. All because of that political deal and personal slight from the year before. A stunning example of how these things play out.
While this is happening, what about the north? Our life, the Tauphyn, is still up there, right?
Still active, still brutal. He captures Tarlis Verogrolativis' niece this time and her family.
And it's more the same horror.
Just sickening. The sources are grimly specific. Her husband, Roland, tied to a tree, tortured with fire. Their daughter, sewn into a sack and thrown in the river.
And Tarlis herself.
Taken to Chequa, publicly lashed, tied to a pole, and stoned to death by the populace. Arlith claimed it was just the mob's fury.
But it feels targeted.
Oh, absolutely. It's extending that blood feud across the entire Raquerle family line. Every act echoes back to Galen's death 30 years prior.
All this just sets the stage for the final, inevitable clash between the main figures of vengeance, doesn't it? Roland and Divis.
The Battle of Raquerle, 488 HKC. This the climax.
Raphael wants peace again.
Yes, but Divis pushes for one last gamble. A winter campaign. She seems desperate.
And vulnerable. You mentioned Nimhryce wasn't there.
Right. Nimhryce had ridden north to deal with Arlos after what happened to Tarlis, so Divis is exposed. Roland manages to trap her near Vibosi.
What was Roland's strategy?
Very effective. He uses a defensive, semicircle formation. But the key move, mounted pikemen and crossbowmen swinging around to hit the rear of Divis' infantry.
Which were inexperienced.
Yes, mostly raw Daconia levies. They broke completely under the rear attack. Her lines just shattered.
And Divis.
Captured.
And Roland. The sources describe this very specifically, don't they? The final act.
They do. Roland apparently stops his men from just beating her down. He demands she look him in the eye.
And then
he personally decapitates her.
33 years after she killed his father, Galen.
The cycle of vengeance, begun at Dinuan Bridge, is completed at Raquerle, with that single, cold, calculated act. The central pillar of the Raquerle resistance is gone.
Is the war over then?
Not quite. Rolan is wary of the politics in the capital, Krezmir, so he actually withdraws strategically. He spends the rest of 488 winning key fights against the Voltanes and the Liori, stabilizing fronts.
And up north? The revenge cycle isn't quite finished there either.
No. Talieris, Divis's daughter, now the new Duchess of Opheria, has her own score to settle. With Tauphyn, the man who killed her cousin Tarlis and her family.
How does she get him?
She sets a trap, fakes a defeat, lures Arleth into pursuing her, captures him, and her vengeance is specific. She has him hung upside down by leather ropes threaded through his ankles and just leaves him there to die.
A grim end. Fitting, perhaps, given his own actions.
A very grim, very direct echo of the cruelty he inflicted.
So by the end of 488, moving into 489, everyone must be exhausted.
Utterly spent. Both sides. The kingdom can barely function. Rolan is still demanding his wife, Queen Nimhryce, and his son Amer be returned. The will to fight is just gone.
Which leads to negotiations.
Yes, the Truce of the Cientos. A big council is held in Cali. All the key players are there. Rolan, Raphael, Carthoir, the colonel who switched sides, Robreg, the Voltai-Duke, Valcaire, who succeeded Arthaire.
And they reach a solution.
A very creative one, a unique political fix. They look at the family lines. Turns out Raphael III's mother and Rolan III's mother were twin sisters.
Twins.
Really?
Yes. So, based on that shared bloodline, they declare both men legitimate kings of Daconia.
Two kings at the same time. That sounds unstable, like a recipe for more conflict later. Was it just papering over the cracks?
Well, there was certainly face-saving after decades of mutual destruction. But the sources strongly suggest there was another much more pressing reason why this very fragile truce actually held.
What was it?
External pressure. Big time. Just weeks before they signed the agreement, news arrived. 5,000 trolls had just marched into the province of the Lower Therium.
5,000 trolls.
Suddenly, fighting each other seemed a lot less important than dealing with that. The Antler Wars didn't end because of justice or forgiveness or even this dual king solution. They ended because of trolls at the gate.
So if we just step back and look at the whole arc, it starts with one disastrous march. Galen's death in 455 HKC.
A death born from incompetence and panic?
Yeah. Which sparks this 33-year vendetta. It spirals through these horrific acts. Theranis tortured, Trigutulisi burned, Tarlis stoned.
All fueled by that core personal hatred between the two houses, culminating in Rolan's execution of Divis.
The kingdom is wrecked, not for policy, but because two families couldn't let go of vengeance, until they were literally too exhausted to continue, and a massive external threat forced their hand.
Exactly. And that brings us to the real takeaway for you, the listener. Think about the kind of peace that's built on exhaustion and fear.
Yeah, how stable is a truce brokered only because 5,000 trolls showed up?
What happens when that external threat recedes? Does the dual kingship actually work, or is it just a pause before the next round?
How long can two legitimate kings rule one ravaged kingdom, especially when the only thing holding them together is necessity, not any kind of real reconciliation? What happens next?
In the year of 4-8, beneath the iron sky, the warriors marched to Loyacan, where blood and faith would lie. Rolan bloodhorn led his host, with vengeance in his heart. For 30 years that passed in wait to play his faithful part. For the blood of Raquerle runs deep in every stone, where Rolan met Divis to claim his father's throne. With steel and fire the battle raged till dawn's first light was shown, and the echoes of their fury forever will be known. Raquerle, the Duchess fierce and bold, had slain his father Gaelen in the days of ancient cold. Now the time had come at last for debts and blood to pay, on the shores of Loyacan, where the warriors lay. Oh, the blood of Raquerle runs deep in every stone, where Rolan met Divis to claim his father's throne. With steel and fire the battle raged till dawn's first light was shown, and the echoes of their fury forever will be known. The arrows flew, the swords did clash, the earth did shake with might, as Ophirian and Tauphyn steel. He broke her lines, he broke her heart, and made the victor's deal. For the blood of Raquerle runs deep in every stone, where Rolan met Davis to claim his father's throne. With steel and fire the battle raged till dawn's first light was shown, and the echoes of their fury forever will be known. The battlefield, her warriors all but slain, with wounds that spoke of battles lost and glory turned to pain. He looked into her eyes that night, and there he saw her fear. With a single blow he took her life, but shed a bitter tear. Oh, the blood of Raquerle runs deep in every stone, where Rolan met Davis to claim his father's throne. With steel and fire the battle raged till dawn's first light was shown, and the echoes of their fury forever will be known. Now Rolan stands the victor, but his heart is cold as ice. For the blood of Raquerle is the cost of vengeance price. The tale will be remembered as the bards sing through the years of Rolan and Davis and the battle fought in tears.
Okay, picture this. A kingdom, Daconia Redni. Yeah. It's just starting to recover after years of this really awful conflict, finally getting some peace, even if it's uneasy.
Right, a fragile peace at best.
Exactly. And then, bang, one single brutal act. State violence, really. It just annihilates everything.
You talk about 492 HKC?
Yeah, using the High King's calendar, that's the year. Prince Amer's execution. It just instantly kicked off the absolute worst phase of the Civil War, the Antler Wars.
And King Roland III's reaction was immediate, just furious.
Totally. Declaring war on the spot. I mean, the man had just tortured and killed his adopted son, his heir.
It's quite the flashpoint.
So for this deep dive, we're not just looking at, troop movements or politics in the abstract. We're tracing how a whole decade of war was really fueled by deep personal stuff. Trauma, paranoia, betrayal.
Absolutely.
Our mission really is to see how the private grief of one king, Raphael III, they called him Leafcloak, and the ambitions, the very pragmatic drive of his rival Roland III, Bloodhorn, how they ended up on this collision course.
Okay, let's get into that. Because the fuse for this whole thing, it wasn't lit on a battlefield. It was lit years earlier. 10 years, actually.
In a schoolroom, wasn't it?
Pretty much. You've got to look at the relationship between Crown Prince Amer, just a young man then, and his tutor, Lord Raphael ver Raquerle. This is back around 481 to 484 HKC.
And Amer was unstable.
Volatile is a good word.
Yeah.
He first accuses Raphael of plotting against him. Then he swings completely the other way, total devotion. But underneath, there's always this suspicion, this paranoia.
Who is he paranoid about?
Everyone, it seems. His own mother, Queen Nimhryce. Even Raphael sometimes.
Right, and then his paranoia gets sort of validated,
Yeah.
but in a terrible way for Raphael.
That's the twist. In 484, Amer runs away from his mother. He gets these ciphered letters to Raphael and his wife, Chessely. She was pregnant at the time.
And the letters revealed.
The big secret. Amer was illegitimate, son of the queen's lover, Pedane Vasilier. And Nimhryce herself was basically a traitor.
Oh, wow. So Raphael suddenly knows the truth. The heir isn't the rightful heir.
Exactly. And Raphael's standing right on the edge. He knows instantly this information will tear the kingdom apart. Civil war.
So what does he do?
He makes a fateful choice. He keeps it secret, withholds the evidence, trying to, keep the peace.
Yeah.
Prioritizing stability over the raw truth.
Which didn't work out so well.
It backfired. Horribly. Less than a year later, 485 HKC, Amer is back, seeking refuge with Raphael again, still terrified of Nimhryce.
And the paranoia is worse.
Much worse. It twists. He starts thinking Chessely, Raphael's pregnant wife, might actually kill him to secure the throne for her own unborn child.
That's incredibly dark.
And then comes the moment that defines everything. Chessely's murdered, throat slit, the baby gone. Just a complete tragedy.
Yeah. And this single event, the loss of Chessely and the child, it becomes this massive, unhealable wound for Raphael, doesn't it?
It defines him.
Completely.
And it becomes the justification, the core reason for everything that follows. What's really key here is how the narratives split immediately.
Two competing stories from the start.
weaponized instantly. Roland's camp, his supporters, they immediately claim Raphael killed his own wife.
To frame a mayor. Why?
To frame a mayor, yeah, and maybe win political backing from the Dorizans, Chesley's powerful family.
Okay, that's one version. What was Raphael's side?
His camp, people like Carthoravi Fakai, they insisted a mayor attacked Raphael in a paranoid fit. And Chesley got caught in the middle, killed during the struggle. Accidentally, perhaps.
We don't know the actual truth.
The sources conflict, but honestly, the actual truth almost doesn't matter as much as how the belief about the truth shaped everything. Raphael was broken, physically, emotionally. Now he's a claimant to the throne, defined by this overwhelming grief.
It really shows how personal pain just bleeds directly into political war.
Precisely. And that tragedy in 485, it immediately kicks off the Second Antler War.
Okay, so war breaks out again. How did things stand militarily?
Rolan, he's the more experienced general, right? He moves fast. Grabs the capital, Chrysalis, and the fleet. Raphael gets crowned over in Krezmir, but his forces are scattered. He's got Ophirian cavalry, some Voltai infantry. Good troops, but not unified.
And Roland had other problems too, didn't he? The Liori, trolls.
Yeah, he was dealing with fights on the borders, but strategically he had the upper hand early on.
So how did the war actually play out? Any key moments?
It was bloody, exhausting for both sides. Roland won a key early battle at Dorgasti. Lost Raphael, about 1,300 men there, opened up the whole province of Rabosi to him.
Ouch.
And Roland showed some tactical smarts, too. In 486, at Vincria, he used these specialized Harlani arrows, very effective against the West Liori, broke their charge. Big losses for the Liori, around 300 to 800.
So Roland's consolidating power, dealing with threats. What about Raphael's side?
Well, his allies, the Voltaine, tried to hit back. They raided into Lefris, Roland's territory, burned Trigatulasi, killed Marshal Arthair's son, Urziane. It was getting personal. It's nasty. Revenge killings.
Sounds like it. But was there a decisive moment, something that really shifted the balance?
Absolutely. 488 HKC, the Battle of Loicairn. That was the big one.
What happened?
Roland managed to encircle the army led by Duchess Divis ve Raquerle. She was Raphael's top commander. Captured her.
Okay. Ransom.
Yeah.
Prisoner exchange.
Roland executed her. Personally.
He personally executed her.
Yes. A duchess, a high-ranking commander. It was brutal. And a massive political statement. Pure intimidation.
I can imagine. That must have hit Raphael hard.
It crippled his side's morale. And honestly, the sheer shock and the exhaustion on both sides after that, it forced them to talk.
So that led to the truce.
Exactly. By 489, they hammered out the Sisi Cientos, the truce. And here's the really weird part. It officially recognized both Raphael III and Roland III as legitimate kings.
Two kings at the same time.
Two kings ruling Daconia ride together. A fascinating, desperate compromise.
While trolls were invading.
Right, the sources mention that while the kings are signing treaties, about 5,000 trolls just took advantage and poured into the Lower Threum. Shows how fragile things were.
So this period, 490 to 492 HKC, this dual kingship, must have been strange.
Very strange, and it really highlighted the differences between the two men. Raphael, leaf cloak. He was prone to melancholy. Sources mention twitches, restless sleep, always thinking about Chesley's child, how old it would have been.
Carrying a heavy weight.
Immense guilt, immense burden. But he wasn't just sitting around moping. He traveled a lot, made donations, listened to people's problems.
There's that story about the vegetables, right?
Yeah, in Tassie. An angry crowd pelts him with rotten food. His guards move to intervene, but he stops them. And he just says, "Nay, they struck not without cause, for it was I who began the war." He just owns it, publicly.
Wow. Okay, so Raphael's dealing with grief and guilt. What about Roland?
Bloodhorn? Complete opposite focus. Pragmatic, all about military strength, stability. He's training hundreds of pikemen every year in his castles, recruiting Liori soldiers now, former enemies, to fight the trolls and secure the borders.
Looking forward, not back.
Entirely. While Raphael is lost in the past, Roland is obsessed with the future. Specifically, who comes next? The succession.
Right, heirs are crucial, especially with two kings.
Crucial for stability. Raphael did marry again in 490 HKC, Caritas Torresina, very young, only 14. But the chronicles say she had a sharp mind, a warm sense of humor. She actually helped him, apparently. Lifted his spirits a bit with conversation, games.
That's something, I guess. What about Roland?
Well, Roland lost Queen Nimhryce in 491. She got sick, a fever, died pretty quickly. And Roland, he remarried almost immediately. Elisabeth Rolesi, a 17-year-old widow. It was purely about getting an heir. He was openly saying he doubted a mayor would ever be fit to rule a kingdom.
So even during the truce, the underlying tension is all about legitimacy, succession, and these very personal issues. Raphael's grief, Roland's need for an heir.
Exactly. Prosperity might have been returning slightly, but the core problem, the personal wounds and political instability, hadn't gone away at all. It was just simmering.
And the biggest wild card was still out there.
Amer, the captive prince, locked away. The whole fragile peace pretty much depended on him staying put.
Which, of course, he didn't.
Naturally. Which brings us to the catalyst for the third and worst war. Late 491 HKC. Amer escapes.
Wow.
During a boar hunt near Duartes, he got help from this Kilnyaro mercenary, Dever ve Ezazagi, the Black Sword, kind of an unknown quantity.
Where did Amer go?
Fled to a villa in Nalmonth, known as a pretty lawless area. He declares himself king again, tries to scrape together an army of bandits. It quickly turns into a joke, really.
The Calf King incident.
That's the one. In 492, he attacks the town of Passerly, gets beaten back easily by the townsfolk, loses over 20 men, and all he manages to steal is, yes, a single calf. Hence the nickname.
Not exactly inspiring confidence.
Not at all.
Oh.
So desperate, Amer listens to Dever's next plan, which is just completely insane.
What was it?
Sneak into Cresmere during a big tournament, abduct Queen Crealis, kill King Raphael.
Ambitious and doomed.
Completely. Because Dever, the Black Sword, he wasn't loyal to Amer for a second.
A double cross?
Triple cross, maybe. The night they were supposed to make their move in the Citadel of Songs, Dever leads Amer and his few followers straight into an ambush by Raphael's guards.
Wow. So Dever betrays Amer to get in good with Raphael.
That was the plan. Dever publicly denounces Amer, calls him a murderer and demon spawn, thinks this will make him a hero. But the price he asked for his betrayal, that's where it gets really weird.
Okay, what did he want? Gold, land, a title.
Nope. He demanded a place in Raphael's personal guard. But witnesses said he just stared fixated at Queen Crealis the whole time.
Oh.
Yeah, pure obsession.
Wow.
Later, he's caught sneaking around near the royal bedroom. Raphael confronts him directly, and Dever just blurts it all out. Confesses undying love for the queen, claims her unborn child is his.
He claimed what?
That the queen was pregnant with his child, and then he challenges King Raphael to a duel for Crealis' hand.
Challenge the king to a duel for the queen in the middle of all this political tension.
It's madness. Absolute peak absurdity. Shows you how personal obsessions were just poisoning everything.
Do we know how the queen felt about this, Crealis?
We actually do. We have a letter she wrote later. She calls Dever an insignificant man, says his feelings weren't love, but the madness of obsession, a specter from my past. She was completely dismissive.
And Raphael, did he believe Dever?
No, he chose to trust Crealis. But the public humiliation was intense. Dever wasn't executed, but he was flogged, 30 lashes, then banished. If he ever came back, he'd lose his tongue.
Okay, so Dever's dealt with. That leaves Amer, the original problem.
Amer, back in chains. And this leads to the final, just devastating encounter in the dungeon.
What happened there?
Raphael goes to see him. He's actually holding Crealis' hand. He tells Amer that he's finally found some happiness, some joy, because Crealis is pregnant. Like maybe Amer's shadow is finally lifting from his life.
Trying to show him he'd moved on.
Perhaps. But Amer throws one last poison dart. He looks at Raphael and sneers. Do you mean that Crealis and Dever together have given you this gift, scholar?
Oof. Right for the wound, implying the baby wasn't his.
Exactly. Hitting Raphael right where Dever's accusation had already caused humiliation. It was too much. Raphael apparently struck Amer and then just turned and left. That sealed it.
So, the trial. What were the charges?
Murder of Cecily, way back when. And the recent killing to some farmers during his failed revolt near Passerly.
And the sentence.
Guilty. The sentence was brutal. 100 lashes, severing of his right hand, then hanging.
Was there any chance of mercy? An appeal?
There was an appeal process, yes, but Raphael denied it. His reasoning, recorded in the sources, was that because he was the person most wronged by Amer, both with Cecily and the insult about Crealis, he felt he was unfit to judge whether mercy or justice should prevail.
So he deferred.
He essentially let the court's original sentence stand. Washed his hands of the final decision, you could say, but the effect was the same. No mercy.
And the execution went ahead.
In stages. They severed his hand on the 12th day of the 9th month, 492 HKC. Then, 7 days later, they hanged him. And in a final gruesome detail, they bound his severed hand to the noose.
Grim. And Roland's reaction?
Immediate. Predictable, maybe. He saw Amer, despite his doubts, as his adopted son and heir. The torture, the execution. Rolan sent a furious message, declared Raphael a false king and traitor for the torture and murder. And just like that, the Third Antler War was on.
So we come full circle. The final war wasn't really about land or taxes or grand strategy, was it?
Not at its core. It was ignited by Raphael's inescapable grief over Sicily, tangled up with Amer's paranoia and his contested legitimacy, and then Dever's completely bizarre, destructive obsession just threw gasoline on the fire. It all led back to that execution.
Shattered the peace completely.
Utterly. You know, Raphael's own son reflected on it years later. He wrote something quite poignant about the dual kingship.
What did he say?
He said, had my father and the Bloodhorn Lord been fused into one soul by the wisdom of the All-Father's grace, they would have become the greatest and most radiant kin of Daconia's lands, one in peace and one in war. Yet they were destined to be born into separate bodies, set against one another in bitter strife.
One in peace, one in war. That's powerful. It sort of sums up the tragedy, doesn't it? These two halves of what could have been a whole.
Exactly. Two sides of a coin forced into opposition.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you, listening. Something to maybe mull over. Given everything we've discussed, the conflicting stories about Cecily, Amer's instability, Raphael's obvious trauma, was his decision to deny Amer's appeal, to let that brutal sentence stand, purely about justice. Was it impartial judgment for a murderer?
Or was it something else?
Or was it, maybe, the final act of a man still fundamentally broken by the ghost of his first wife? A man for whom justice and personal vengeance had become, perhaps, tragically blurred. The sources say he deferred judgment, claiming impartiality, but was his heart truly impartial? That's something to think about.
In the shadows of the night, I ride through the forest deep where secrets hide. Oh, release my heart's despair. You're the light I seek, yet never dare. Release my love, my star in the dark. I cross through the flames for just one spark. Your name is the song that haunts my dreams. In the depths of my soul, your light radiates. I fought for your honor, I bled for your grace, but they call me mad in this hollow place. If only you'd see my love is true, I'd lay down my life to be near to you. Release my love, my star in the dark. I cross through the flames for just one spark. Your name is the song that haunts my dreams. In the depths of my soul, your light radiates. They chain me and scorn me, call me a fool, but they don't know the depth of this rule. For you are the queen of my heart's domain, and without you, my love, life is in vain. I've wandered the halls of despair and pain, but your voice in my heart keeps me sane. Oh, release, I'll break every chain, just to feel your touch and end this refrain. Release my love, my star in the dark. I cross through the flames for just one spark. Your name is the song that haunts my dreams. In the depths of my soul, your light radiates. So here I stand, with a heart torn apart, forever your servant, till death do its part. Oh, release my love, my star in the dark. Even if we're worlds apart, you'll forever be my mark.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we are strapping in for a real crash course. Dynastic blood feuds, strategic blunders, some spectacular personal vengeance. We're plunging headlong into the Antler Wars. This devastating, long-running conflict really just tore apart the Union Kingdom of Daconia, right?
Yeah.
And we're specifically looking at the end of the Second War and, well, all of the Third War. That's the focus.
That's right. Our mission today really is to cut through, decades of resentment. We want to focus on the years 489 to 493 HKC, High Kingdom calendar.
Right.
We need to track how this fragile peace just descends into total war, and specifically how the two rival kings, Raphael III v. Raquerle, the Leaf Cloak, and Rolan III v. Tauphyn, Bloodhorn, how they managed or maybe mismanaged their realms.
Yeah, mismanagement seems like the right word sometimes.
It really was a failure, defined as much by their personalities as any geopolitical misstep.
Okay, let's just quickly set the stage, though. This core feud is basically House Raquerle versus House Tauphyn, right? These two big families fighting for control.
Exactly. It properly blew up back in 455 HKC, leading to decades of bloodshed, and eventually to our two guys, Rolan and Raphael.
And that Second Antler War, 485 to 488, it just showed how destructive this rivalry had become.
Oh, absolutely. Rolan, the Soldier King, he grabs the capital, Chrysalis, almost straight away, crushes his rivals at Dorgasti.
But the lasting image wasn't really the battles, was it? It was the famine.
No, it was the famine. We're talking 20,000 peasants starving just in Nimhryce alone in 487. Just total devastation.
And the cruelty, it was so personal. Rolan captures his rival general, Dives v. Raquerle, in 488.
And executes her himself.
Himself. That's the Bloodhorn for you, making it absolutely personal.
Yeah.
Forever.
Indeed. And the war only really ended because everyone was exhausted. That led to the CSC Cientos Truce, 489-490. Critically, this truce recognized both kings.
So, a divided kingdom.
A divided kingdom, a temporary peace, and immediately threatened by 5,000 trolls invading the Lower Thrium borderlands. A huge external problem right on their doorstep.
Okay, so this brings us to the tenuous peace, 490 to 492. And how these two kings govern during this ceasefire is... well, it's fascinatingly different.
Completely different styles.
Raphael III, Leaf Cloak, he goes on this big PR tour, doesn't he?
He does. He tours his realm, makes a big show of honoring Davis's pyre, gets the Ridney, the people in the West, on side by dramatically halving taxes for widows. Very popular move.
Trying to be the good king.
Trying to be the merciful, popular king. He even admitted fault when some angry citizens pelted him in Tacy, said, it was I who began the war.
Wow.
But privately, sources say he was a wreck, night terrors, grieving his dead wife Chesley and their lost child.
So he's trying to buy stability, basically, projecting strength while suffering privately. And that leads him to Voltaï.
Yes, he needed cash, he needed allies. He got both from Voltaï, the southern powerhouse, by betrothing himself to the young Creeley Storsina.
But there was a price for that Voltaïne gold, wasn't there? A big one?
A huge one. Land. Raphael ceded the fertile territory of Ridninite to Voltaï. Purely strategic move for Raphael, but it absolutely gutted Ridney loyalty, laid the groundwork for a massive revolt later. We'll definitely circle back to that.
Okay, so Raphael's doing the charm offensive, making strategic deals with huge future costs. What about Rolan, Bloodhorn?
Rolan, pure pragmatist, all soldier. He's standardizing garrisons, recruiting prison levies, leading campaigns himself, crushing trolls, retaking Qualis lands on the frontier, all about consolidating hard power.
No PR tours for him.
No, none of that. And his personal life was just as calculated. After his first queen died, he needed another strategic marriage. So he makes peace with the Liori.
Those volatile Western lords.
The very same. Trades a partial withdrawal from Qualis for marriage to Velis, Casper's 17-year-old daughter, and he completely sidelines his adopted heir, Amerve Pered, calls him past childbearing, referring back to the previous queen. A mare who he'd kept caged, by the way.
Right, the caged heir. And a mare's fate. That becomes the spark, doesn't it? The personal trigger for round 3.
It really does. It wasn't just dynastic anymore. It became Roland's personal justification, and the whole sequence is just bizarre.
How so?
Well, first there's this failed kidnap attempt on a mare, probably Roland's guys trying to get him back. Then he gets rescued by this rogue Kilniaro duelist, Devere.
Rescued in quotes.
Right. Devere promptly declares a mare king. But their little rebellion is a total fiasco. They're basically famous for stealing a calf at Passerly. That's it.
The chicken thief king. Not exactly inspiring loyalty.
Not at all. And then the tragedy deepens. De Vere, the rescuer, betrays Amer, leads him straight into an ambush.
Oh, De Vere gets away with it.
Well, he gets flogged and banished, but Amer, he faces trial in September 492.
And Raphael's court uses this chance.
Oh, yeah. They dredge up old charges, including the murder of Raphael's wife, Cecily. The sentence was designed for maximum horror. 100 lashes, right hand chopped off, then hanging.
Wait, hang on. If the truce was so shaky, and everyone knew Rolan lived for personal vengeance, why would Raphael do this? Denying the appeal, saying he was too partial to grant mercy, wasn't that basically handing Rolan the perfect excuse to restart the war?
It was an incredible provocation. You're absolutely right. Whether Raphael fully grasped the implications or was just blinded by grief and vengeance himself, who knows? But he essentially gifted Rolan the moral high ground.
And Rolan took it.
Immediately, his letter declaring the Third Antler War arrived like a thunderclap, citing the torture and murder of his heir, the truce, over. Now it was about vengeance.
Okay, so war's back on. But Rolan hits problems straight away, doesn't he?
He does. Late 492, he's forced into this tough winter campaign against a huge troll horde in the Lower Threum. And crucially, Duke Valcaire of Nimhryce declares neutrality. Big blow to Rolan's manpower makes him vulnerable back home.
And things were vulnerable back home. Betrayals.
Oh, big time. Rolan survives an assassination attempt by one of his own officers at Mescopoli, Guillaume de Saint-Pierre. Rolan was smart, though, spread rumors he was dead to see who else would show their hand.
And did they?
They did. A full-blown coup attempt in the capital, Chrysalis, led by Pedaine Viciliere, claiming allegiance to some unknown King Fernan.
But this is where it gets interesting with the populace, right?
Exactly. This is key. The city guilds, the ordinary people, they'd armed and trained their militias during the truce, and they rose up for Rolan's loyalists. They actually caught Pedaine trying to escape across the frozen Threum River.
That's a huge shift. Power moving beyond just the nobles.
A massive shift. Meanwhile, another coup, this one succeeds in Rafi, Collier de Saint-Pierre reveals he's actually Vernaine ve Pered, another claimant.
Another Pered. It's getting crowded.
Right. Vernaine tries to solidify his rule with terror, crushes the local guild uprising there, hangs 118 guild members, executes 3 Tauphins, gives their wives and daughters to his officers. Brutal stuff.
But that claim didn't stick for long.
No, Vernaine's campaign fails miserably. Humiliated at Verbosi, he flees south, gets caught by Raphael's scouts.
Hi, Raphael.
Raphael, probably smelling danger and harboring another claimant, refuses him, orders him sent back to Rolan, basically death sentence.
And Rolan delivers it.
With theatrical flair.
Right.
He gets back to Chrysalis after beating the trolls at Voile, marches up to the palace steps, takes his sword, and decapitates both Pedaine, the Chrysalis coup leader, and Vernaine, the Peretic claimant. Some say with one stroke.
Wow. Public, brutal message.
Absolutely, stamping his authority. Remarkably, though, he spares his pregnant wife, Queen Valise, even though she was implicated in the Chrysalis too, forgave her treason, but kept her very, very close.
Okay, so Rolan's dealing with internal threats by chopping heads off. What's Raphael up to?
Raphael's actually distracted by personal tragedy. He has to rush back to his capital, Cresmere. Queen Crelis has a near-fatal fever, giving birth to their son, Gorion, a sickly child.
So Raphael's out of action for a bit.
Which leaves the Raquerle campaign in the eastern provinces, Opheria, in the hands of Duchess Talyrus. And she wages, well, a campaign of pure, unrestrained vengeance against the Tauphyn-aligned counties there.
Mirroring Rolan's earlier brutality.
Directly. It's pure tit-for-tat atrocity. Talyrus used deception, disguised troops as herders to seize towns, forced captured nobles like Gorlain Tauphyn to dig their own graves before shooting them with crossbows.
Grim.
And at the siege of Echequa, no mercy. She burns a crippled veteran, Chalain Tauphyn, alive, drowns another noble's young son, Lofair, in Lake Philion, declared it all necessary vengeance for the Second War.
While all this personal vengeance is going on, Raphael has that other huge problem brewing, the one you mentioned earlier.
Yes, his massive geopolitical distraction. The War of Hemlock in Redny, June 493. This is the direct result of that land deal with Voltaire.
Let's make that clear for everyone. Raphael gives Ryden and Piet land to Voltaire for cash.
Yep.
The Voltaires slap on harsh new hunting and fishing licenses. And for the Ridney, where hunting was always a free right for all men. This isn't just economic, it's fundamental.
It's an attack on their way of life, their traditions, exactly. So Hamlock Virelia, a respected kinsman to both kings, actually, leads the rebellion.
And these are the famous Ridney longbowmen.
The very same. Dressed in bear and wolf pelts, they attack Voltaigne towns, capture hundreds of women. It's serious. And Raphael's response?
Weak.
Non-committal. He hesitates, waits to see if his own capital is safe before sending help. The Ridney basically say, look, you gave away our land, our dowry, you didn't protect it, so your kingly oath is void.
Okay. So Raphael's distracted by his wife, his kid, and a full-blown revolt in Rydna. Rolan must see an opportunity here.
A massive one, and he plays it perfectly. First, a strategic masterstroke. Secures his flank by making peace with the Liori leader, Case Bear, at Lake Janin.
What if he give up?
Half of Qualis. Big concession. But in return, he gets huge amounts of silver and, crucially, superior iron catapults. Sacrifices land for security and better tech. Smart move.
Okay, flank secured. Then what?
Then comes the deception. Pure genius, really. Rolan plants a false rumor, an 8,000-strong troll invasion hitting the lower Thrium. He makes a big show of preparing to march south, feigning anger in Chrysalis.
To lure Raphael away.
Exactly. And Raphael falls for it completely, splits his forces, gets bogged down near Raquerle chasing ghosts, this non-existent troll army.
While Raphael's doing that.
Roland's Ildvaldi captain, Nar, uses cunning naval tactics, fires ships, traps in the shallows to destroy the Voltaigne relief fleet coming to help Raphael. So Raphael's external support gone.
Ouch.
And then Roland makes his real move, sweeps north like lightning, seizes Rallamy, key towns, reaches Daily, the gateway to Kresmir, almost without a fight. Raphael has been completely outplayed, cornered.
Which brings us to the big one. The Battle of Tauphyn, September 493.
The decisive battle. Roland has about 8,000 men, crucially, double Raphael's cavalry. Raphael has maybe 7,200, a mix of his own Daconian pikemen and those Voltaigne forces.
And the cavalry made the difference.
Completely. Roland saw the gap open up between Raphael's Daconians and the Voltaigne's allies, who maybe didn't trust each other that much. He charged his cavalry right into that gap, shattered Raphael's lines, total rout.
Raphael escapes.
Flees the field with Robrek Dorzin, abandoning his army. Roland's losses are maybe 800, Raphael. Nearly 6,000 killed, wounded, or captured. A crushing absolute victory for Roland.
And standing on the battlefield, with his pregnant queen Valis, Roland declares.
So now peace has finally come to Daconia's lands.
Peace, or so he thought.
Did it really mean peace? I mean, yes, the Third Antler War was driven by that intense personal vengeance, Amer's death, Talyr's atrocities, but Roland won through brilliant strategy, and let's be honest, Raphael basically shooting himself in the foot geopolitically with that riding deal.
So Roland dominates the center now. The dynastic war looks settled. But the cost. Wow. Half of Qualis gone to the Liori. And worse, maybe, the Ridney longbowmen, the best fighters around, are in open revolt against both kings now under Hamlock.
And don't forget the guilds, the city militias. They're armed, they're trained, they've fought in coups. That popular power, that's a whole new destabilizing factor that wasn't really there before these wars kicked off.
Right. So Roland thinks his victory at Tauphyn means the conflict's over. But this whole war, it's empowered regional lords like Talyrus. It's created armed popular rebellions like Hamlocks and the guilds. It begs the question, doesn't it? Going forward from 493, what's actually the bigger threat to Daconia? Is it the old dynastic feud that Roland just won? Or is it this violent demand for independence and power from its own people? Something for you to mull over.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're diving into, well, 3 years of just absolute chaos. The 4th and 5th Antler Wars, 493 to 496 HKC.
It really is a critical period, a hinge moment, you could say, where the Union Kingdom of Daconia Riden just starts to unravel.
Yeah, you've got King Roland III fighting on, 3 fronts, the Raquerle resistance in Ophiria, Raphael III's Voltaigne forces, and then suddenly, boom, the Ridney independence movement kicks off too.
Exactly. All overlapping, all feeding into each other. It's a perfect storm.
So our goal here is to dig into the source material and see how Roland's military skill, which was pretty impressive in 493, kind of dissolves into this brutal multi-front slog.
A slog that shattered the kingdom, really. It forced these impossible choices and, well, it shows how fragile power can be, even for someone like Roland.
We're looking at that shift, aren't we? Roland, the brilliant general, becoming something else. Rolan the fracturing tyrant, maybe.
It's a complex picture. And to understand it, you have to remember the lead-in from the Third Antler War. Rolan had just smashed Raphael's main army at Isle de Cetera. He dealt with the West Liori. Things looked good on paper.
Looked good, yeah. But the reality...
The reality was Talier's Raquerle had his forces cornered up in Echequa, in Ophiria, and the War of Hamlock in Rydne. The groundwork for that was already laid, thanks to Raphael giving away Rydne Piet, so peace, no chance.
Okay, so the stage is set. Let's look at Rolan's first big move after Isle Cetera. This is the capture of Queen Creluce and Crown Prince Goran near Krezmir, late 493 HKC.
Right, 30th day of the 9th month. And Rolan's reaction is telling. Immediately reveals his approach.
As so?
Well, the sources say when Creluce is brought before him, his first comment is a crude jest about consuming her son and taking her as consort right there and there.
Consuming her son, that's incredibly graphic. Pure intimidation.
Pure dominance display. Shock value. He wanted to break her will instantly. But, you know, it also cemented his image for many as, well, a savage, not a king.
Did it work? Did she break?
He didn't actually follow through on the threat, thankfully. He relented, taking Goran only as his ward. But listen to his reasoning. He said it was to prevent the boy becoming a symbol for another uprising. He literally called it preventing a future Fourth Antler War.
The irony being, he's neck deep in it already.
Precisely. He's trying to preempt a war he's already fighting.
So he's got the queen and prince. Does he consolidate? No. He divides his forces and heads north into Ophiria, leaving his pregnant wife, Queen Valise, in Krezmir. That seems incredibly risky.
It was. You could call it hubris, or maybe desperation masked as boldness. He felt he had to press the attack while his enemies were disorganized.
And Ophiria was known Raquerle territory, right?
Yeah,
tough fight expected.
Definitely. And the situation he found in Echequa was grim.
Yeah.
Tauphyn defenders were starving, literally eating saddles, boots, anything.
Okay, so he presses on. And this crossing of Lake Philion, the sources mention using helmets as buckets in a storm. 100 soldiers lost.
Yeah, it sounds almost suicidal, doesn't it? Using helmets to bail out boats in a storm. It speaks to the sheer reckless drive Rolan had at this point. But somehow, he gets Karas.
And captures Thembri, which leads to another moment of specific brutality. The execution of Gorlanis via Raquerle.
This one's particularly nasty. Gorlanis apparently struck the executioner's hand as he approached. Rolan's response. He ordered her hands chopped off first, then her head.
Again, maximum terror, but then, strangely, he spares her daughters. Why?
It seems calculated. Terrorize the nobility into submission with the execution, but leave some lineage intact to, maybe, prevent the entire Raquerle clan unifying in absolute opposition. Keep a potential lever. It was strategic cruelty.
Did it work? Prevent unification?
Not really. Talier's Raquerle rallied the resistance almost immediately, and the Raquerle counterattack was just as brutal.
The fight on the frozen lake.
Exactly. Winter sets in, Talieris sends Skydeni warriors across the ice. They ambush a Rolan relief force, slaughter them, and the sources are clear. They desecrated the bodies, tit for tat, terror breeding terror.
So Rolan's gains are vanishingly small and incredibly costly. Pyrrhic, as you said.
Absolutely. He retakes Thembri, pushes on to Lior, the capital, only to find it deserted.
Which sounds like a trap.
It was. A clever one. The Raquerle had drenched the empty city in lamp oil and mead. Rolan's forces move in, the Raquerle set it ablaze, and then ambush his men as they try to flee the inferno.
And General Vislain is killed in that ambush.
Killed and decapitated. A major loss, a huge blow to morale. Rolan's northern campaign is just falling apart.
And right at this low point, militarily, he gets devastating personal news.
Yes. Word arrives that Queen Valise died in childbirth back in Krezmir, late on the 16th day of the 10th month, 493.
Oh, man. How did he take it?
The sources describe him as completely shattered, collapsing, sitting in silence for hours, praying, just drained. The child, a daughter, Timais, survived, but Rolan was broken by the loss.
And this grief, this exhaustion, it impacts his decisions.
Massively. He essentially gives up on the Ophirian campaign right then, pulls most of his forces out, leaves just 3,000 men under Orphain v Tauphyn, the local duke, and retreats south. By the 5th month of 494, he's out.
So Rolan's Ophirian venture ends in bloodshed, grief, and strategic failure. He's run himself ragged. Meanwhile, Voltai in the southwest,
watching and waiting,
happy.
Very patiently. This brings us to Duke Hrobrecht Doyazin. He's the real power behind the ailing king Raphael III, the Leafcloak King.
And Voltai is strong.
Very strong. 10,000 seasoned militia, those skilled Amatiniari guilds churning out weapons, even a new war fleet built down in Doveo. And crucially, they have popular support. Rolan is tied to the Nimhryce, who are despised. Raphael, despite being sick, is loved by the common folk.
So Robrek doesn't rush in while Roland's busy in the north.
Not at all. His strategy is pure patience. There's that great quote where he compares Rolan floundering near Lake Filion to the old story of Paithfel losing his knights there. When Robrek's own captains urged action, asking what he was waiting for, his answer was just the summer.
Let Roland exhaust himself. Smart.
Very. Robrek understood time was on his side. And he had this deeper view of the conflict. He's quoted saying something like, Roland's men fight for love of him or for gifts, but his people, the Raquerles and Rolan, they fight because they were Voltae and Opheria before the Union Kingdom, and they'll be Voltae and Opheria after it's gone.
That's a fundamental difference in what they're fighting for, endurance versus conquest.
Exactly. It explains their resilience.
Still, even with that confidence, the Rolan do make an offer to Roland, don't they, while he's licking his wounds from Opheria?
They do. They propose terms. Recognize Roland as king if he gives them Cryolise and Gorion, confirms the Green Vale border, gives them half the revenue from Harpy's Pass, and some land in Nimhryce.
Quite a list. How does Roland respond?
He dismisses most of it out of hand, but, crucially, he concedes 1 point, the Green Vale border.
And that turns out to be a huge mistake.
A fatal political blunder, really. For Roland, it's maybe a minor territorial adjustment. But for everyone else, especially his own supporters in the regional powers, it looks like the first crack in the Union Kingdom, a sign he's willing to trade territory for peace.
Undermining the whole principle he's supposedly fighting for.
Precisely. And the impact is immediate, almost instantaneous.
This is where Ragnar comes in.
Yes. Word of the Green Vale concession reaches the Ridney garrisons over in Naiad around the 8th month of 494. They see it, they interpret it as Roland weakening, maybe even abandoning Rydney eventually, and they act.
They switch sides.
They lay down their arms for Roland and swear allegiance to Hamlock Virilia, and then on the 17th day of the 9th month, 494, Hamlock formally declares Rydn's independence.
Wow. So that single concession ignites a whole new war.
It's the birth of the Fifth Antler War. Until now, Roland was fighting the Fourth, suppressing internal rebels like the Raquerle and the Voltan supporters of Raphael. But Rydn declaring independence, that's different. That's a former part of his kingdom claiming sovereignty. It's not just another front. It's a fundamental challenge to the Union itself.
So now he's got Opheria simmering, Voltae waiting, and Rydn in open revolt. 3 distinct enemies. What's his next move?
He plans to hit the Ridney rebels first, try to nip that in the bud. But before he can, Voltae makes its move, sticking to Robrek's patient, calculated plan.
Not a land invasion.
No, a naval strike. War galleys hit Raquerle harbor, burning 40 ships from Nar's fleet, a major blow to Roland's sea power. It forces his hand. He has to turn west to deal with Voltae now.
And his mood after Opheria, the queen's death.
That's dark.
Extremely dark. And his march west towards Tauphyn reflects that. He unleashes what the sources call a reign of terror.
Any specific examples?
The most horrifying is the Council of Ridney's Alley. He has the entire town council seized, stripped naked, locked in a barn, and the barn set on fire. My God. Calculated cruelty again.
Yes, and terrifyingly effective in the short term. News of that massacre spread, and apparently over 100 nearby villages just submitted immediately out of sheer fear.
But Tauphyn itself doesn't fold.
No, Tauphyn resists fiercely. The city is well defended, thanks to those Voltaine fortifications, and the defenders, they're defiant.
This is where the wedding cakes come in.
Right. In a bizarre act of defiance, they start catapulting wedding cakes over the walls at Roland's besieging army.
Wedding cakes. What's the message there? We have plenty, and we mock your siege.
Pretty much. A show of abundance, morale, and utter contempt. Meanwhile, Roland's forces are bleeding. The siege lasts 22 days, constant bombardment. He loses 1,600 men taking Tauphyn.
1,600? That's a heavy price.
Very heavy. He takes the city eventually, late 5th month of 495, cutting supply lines to Calais. But it's another bloody, costly victory.
Things seem to be spiraling. He then fights the Battle of Terradori near Cresmere.
Yes, against Carthoir ve Facaille, and significantly, Talleyrus ve Raquerle is there too, Opheria joining forces with Voltae's general.
And Roland doesn't win this one.
No, he's bloodied, forced to retreat. He has to leave Cresmere, where his infant daughter Nimhryce is lightly defended. It looks like a potential disaster.
But then, something unexpected happens.
Yes, the chaos of the multi-front war accidentally saves him. Just as Carthoir could have pressed his advantage, his forces suddenly withdraw from Cresmere.
Why?
Because Hamlock Virilia, the new leader of independent Raiden, chose that exact moment to launch a surprise raid across Lake Dovace. He started besieging Dovace itself, Duke Antler Wars' capital.
So Roland's enemies are now fighting each other.
Exactly. Raiden attacking Voltai buys Roland crucial breathing room.
And he uses that time to shore up his position.
He does. Politically. Winter 495, he makes his fourth marriage, this time to Daenerys. Her father is Duke Valkyr II of Nimhryce, secure that region's loyalty.
Strategic marriage. What else?
He needs to secure his eastern border, too. So he makes a controversial peace deal with the West Lori, with Caesper Virelacy.
Controversial how?
He trades away the lands of Qualis, quite a chunk of territory, in exchange for a 10-year alliance, giving away land again.
How did his own people react to that?
Badly, especially in the big trading cities.
Yeah.
The guilds in Chrysalis were furious. There was a revolt, the famous one where they started throwing snowballs at the king's troops.
Snowballs? Seriously?
Yes. It turned bloody, though. 100 people died in the crackdown, and Roland had 3 ringleaders publicly hanged. He claimed he was offering wealth and tranquility while ducking snowballs. Shows the disconnect.
He's sacrificing territory, alienating his subjects. It feels like desperation.
It's the strategy of someone trying to hold things together by any means necessary. But with Nimhryce secured by marriage and the East Lori neutralized by treaty, he's ready for another push against Voltai. Spring 496.
He gathers a new army.
About 7,600 men. Advances on Dovace again. This leads to the Battle of Nykaruzi.
Another tough fight.
Incredibly tough. Fought in marshlands. Roland wins technically, but the cost is immense. 1,200 of his own men dead against 1,400 Voltaigne casualties. The sources note this reflects the enemy shifting to a more defensive strategy, making Roland pay dearly for every inch.
Victory, but always at a staggering price. And then just as things are still balanced on a knife edge, another twist.
The biggest twist yet, maybe. Raphael the Third Leafcloak, the Voltaigne king, dies.
In battle, assassinated.
Neither. Almost absurdly mundane. He falls down a staircase in Dovace, hits his head, the wound gets infected, and he dies. First day of the 5th month, 496.
Wow. An anticlimax. How does Roland react to his main rival just dying?
He plays it smart politically, declares a day of mourning, gives this sort of reflective eulogy, calls Raphael a good heart, a learned scholar, but importantly, a poor king, led astray by self-serving dukes.
Pointing the finger directly at the Dorzans.
Exactly. Trying to delegitimize their continued resistance now that their king is gone.
So, with Raphael dead, Roland is technically the sole monarch of the whole Union Kingdom again. Does he press his advantage?
He offers peace first, a final offer to Voltai, now led by Duke Antler Wars.
What's the offer?
Keep the lands you occupy in Raiden and Nimhryce. Just withdraw your forces from Dovace, acknowledge me as king.
Seems generous, almost. How does Danther respond?
Completely uncompromising. His reply comes in the 8th month of 496, and it fundamentally changes the game.
What does he demand?
He says Voltai will recognize Roland as king only if Roland recognizes Voltai's independence as a sovereign principality.
Full independence. He's not asking for concessions within the kingdom. He's demanding to leave it.
Precisely. Roland started fighting rebels. Now he's facing states demanding sovereignty. It's a whole new type of war.
Does Roland counter?
He makes a weak counteroffer, something about splitting the income from Harpy's pass, but it's pointless. Danther already controls the pass anyway.
So the talking's over.
The talking's over. War is inevitable. Cartwar Vifakai is already marching with 8,000 men. The conflict is set to continue, but on completely different terms.
Which brings us back to that core idea from Robert Dorison you mentioned earlier.
Right, that philosophical difference. Roland fought with conquest, brutality, strategic marriages, treaties, trying to force unity. But all his actions, all his costly victories, they just fractured the kingdom more deeply.
He didn't create loyal subjects. He created enduring enemies. Voltai, Ophiria, right?
Enemies rooted in that ancient regional identity Robrek talked about. They believe they existed before the Union and will exist after it.
So Roland has managed to secure alliances, survive betrayals, win battles, but the very nature of the conflict has shifted under his feet. It's no longer about putting down rebellion, it's about facing formalized sovereignties.
His power base relies on his personal charisma, these alliances, and these incredibly costly military campaigns. Theirs relies on something deeper, maybe. Regional endurance. He shattered the kingdom trying to hold it together.
It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it? Roland survived these 3 brutal years, yes. But looking ahead, How long can power built like his on personal loyalty, on force, actually sustain itself against enemies who believe they represent something older, something that will outlast him and his kingdom? Something for you to think about until our next deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're jumping into, well, a really brutal 5 years in Daconian history. Just incredibly rapid and consequential. Our mission, really, is to unpack how one king, Rolan III, basically crushed his rivals militarily, only to see his entire kingdom, centuries old, just completely fall apart almost immediately after his own death. We're looking at the collapse of the Union Kingdom, roughly 493 to 499 HKC.
Yeah, and it's a story that really shows military skill doesn't always mean political survival, does it? It's all about strategic errors, betrayals, succession problems, and right at the heart of it is that old, really toxic feud between House Raquerle and House Tauphyn, the old guard versus the new, and it finally just explodes here.
So, sources. We've got quite a pile, actually. Detailed military reports, chronologies, but also personal notes which hint at Roland's mindset maybe getting a bit desperate.
Right.
We'll track him from this huge victory into, well, a strategic nightmare. And all this is happening while you've got these big independence movements kicking off, the Ridney in the northwest, Voltaire in the southwest.
Mm-hmm. And just quickly on the details, because the sources are quite specific. Geography. Think Raiden Rebellion, that's northwest. Colder region. Voltaire seeking independence, that's southwest. And we'll skip the tricky Daconian and month names, just focus on the season and year. It helps keep things clear as we move through these campaigns pretty fast.
Right. Okay. Part 1. Roland's big moment, and maybe his big mistake. Let's start where Roland must have thought he'd basically won. Late 493, he just smashes Raphael's main army at El Cedre. Cavalry charge, totally devastating. His losses are, what, about 800?
Around that, yeah. Pretty light for the outcome. Raphael's side, over 5,800. That's killed and captured. Just catastrophic for them.
Yeah, strategically.
Oh, it was huge. More than just a battle win. It was like a political decapitation. Roland takes the royal fortress, Cresmere, without even a fight. And inside, he captures Raphael's wife, Queen Crelise, and crucially, their baby son, Gorion, the heir.
Right. The heir. So politically, the Raphael cause should be finished. Done.
You'd absolutely think so. Should have been the end of it right there.
But it wasn't. And this is where Roland makes, well, maybe the first really questionable move. He's just won this massive victory, got the queen, the heir. Why on earth does he immediately turn north towards Opheria, into what his own generals apparently called the Ophirian grind? Was that just arrogance? Or was there some political thing forcing his hand?
It was, more complex. Strategic necessity, maybe, but driven by pride, definitely. See, his allies, the Tauphyns, were trapped up there. Starting in Echequa, Raquerle loyalists still held out. Roland felt he had to rescue them, honor-bound,
Okay, an obligation.
Exactly. But it was a classic trap, diverting resources he couldn't really spare. He launches this really risky winter campaign, executes the enemy commander Gorlanes v. Raquerle, but he's up against Talyrus v. Raquerle, who is just brilliant at this kind of grinding, attritional warfare.
And a grind is what he got. The sources paint a really nasty picture of that campaign. The low point, winter 494. These local clans, the Skydonai, fierce fighters, especially in snow.
Oh, absolutely deadly in those conditions.
They just butchered Roland's relief forces on the frozen Lake Filion. Thousands of his best infantry gone.
Yeah, it was a disaster. That Ophirian campaign just bled him dry. Talyrus was relentless, burning towns, besieging the forts Roland had just taken. It got so bad, Roland had to impose this horrible night kill curfew just to try and stop the constant raiding. Think about the psychological impact. And the drain on manpower.
Yeah.
Huge.
And personally devastating too, right?
Yeah.
While he's stuck up there, news arrives.
Yes. His queen, Velise, died in childbirth. Their daughter, Nimhryce, survived, but still.
Just awful timing. So by spring 494, Roland basically gives up on Opheria.
He had to. He pulls out most of his forces, leaves a small garrison under Duke Orphain. It was a total failure. Wasted men, resources, morale, and crucially, it opened the door elsewhere.
How so?
Because while Roland's best troops were freezing and dying up north, those political concessions he'd made earlier to Voltaire, giving them the Green Vale frontier land, that really, really angered the northern lords.
And that leads us to Hamlock v. Aurelia.
Precisely. Fall of 494, Hamlock declares independence. proclaims the Kingdom of Rhyani in the northwest, and that officially kicks off the Fifth Antler War, the war that destroys everything. So Rolan basically traded a localized fight in Ophiria for a massive multi-front independence war. Not a good trade.
Not good at all.
Yeah.
Okay, part 2. The North is lost, basically creating a new enemy. So Rolan pivots again, this time southwest, toward the Raphael heartland, which is being run by Duke Robrecht Doriazen from Dovesi.
Right. Rolan knew he couldn't deal with Hamlock in the north while Voltaire was still a threat in the southwest. He needed to knock them out. And when a Voltaire raiding party burned his ships down at Raquerle, well, Rolan snapped. He retaliated hard, besieged the city of Tassi in spring of 495.
And Tassi was bloody, wasn't it? Fell after, what, 3 weeks? Multiple assaults?
Yeah, 22 days, 3 major assaults, cost Rolan another 1,600 men. And you see how stretched he is here, trying to buy peace on one border while fighting furiously on another.
Which leads to the treaty with the Liori, ceding territory.
Exactly. He makes a 10-year peace deal, gives Qualis to Kaisper Rolasi, desperate move to secure his eastern flank, but it backfires instantly. Huge riot in Chrysalis. People were furious about him giving away land. Shows you the public mood.
It really feels like he's losing control on multiple fronts. And then there's this weird battle near Territory. Rolan loses to the Voltaire general, Carthor. But Carthor doesn't follow up. Why not?
This is fascinating coordination, whether it was planned or just lucky timing. Just as Carthor had Rolan on the ropes, he gets news. Hamlock's Ridney forces, way up north, had launched this incredibly bold raid deep into Voltaire territory, hitting their capital, Dovesi.
Wow. So Carthor had to pull back to defend his own capital.
Had to, immediately. It perfectly shows how the multi-front war worked against Rolan. His enemies were, in effect, distracting each other, buying time for these independence movements to really take root.
But the biggest shift wasn't military. It was, well, biological fate.
Pretty much. Spring of 496, there's another bloody, inconclusive battle in Ikaruzi, awful marsh fighting, lots of losses on both sides. And then news hits the camps. Raphael Leafcloak, Rolan's great rival, is dead.
Not in battle.
No, apparently he just fell, maybe off a horse, maybe just tripped, got an infection, died. Just like that.
Huh. Anticlimactic for such a major figure. So Rolan sees an opportunity.
Absolutely. A political opening, he offers peace terms. Voltaire can keep the lands they've gained, just abandon Dovesi, swear loyalty again. Seems reasonable, right? Raphael's gone.
Yeah, you'd think they'd take it. Why did the talks collapse?
Because the new guy, Duke d'Anther Doriazen, wasn't Raphael. He was more politician than warrior. He didn't just want land. He upped the stakes. Demanded Rolan recognize Voltaire as fully independent, a sovereign kingdom.
And Rolan wouldn't do that.
No way. Too much pride. The Union Kingdom had stood for centuries. He wouldn't be the king to break it up. He refused, flat out.
So refusal means more war. Part 3, Rolan's final campaign. Fatal Autumn, 496.
Yep. Negotiation failed. It's back to fighting. D'Anther digs in, holds the Harpies Pass out west. He gathers a big army, 8,000 men under Carthor again near Dovesi, setting the stage for one last big clash.
And this is the Battle of Rival Tildy. And here Rolan, he's actually brilliant again, isn't he? Militarily.
Oh, tactically, it was a masterpiece. His troops were tired, maybe outnumbered. But Rolan completely read Carthor's plan. Carthor tried to feint, sending part of his army across a river. Rolan anticipated it, pulled back most of his own forces, let the Voltaires establish a bridgehead, and then just unleashed hell with his reserve crossbowmen, caught them in a devastating crossfire right at the bridge.
Threshed them.
Losses. Huge for Voltaire. 1,300 dead. Rolan lost maybe 400. A clear, decisive victory. He'd beaten their last major field army. Raphael was dead, he must have felt. Finally, it's over. He leads his troops back to Drlomi for the winter, surely thinking he'd finally won the war.
But the war was only over for him. He gets back to Drlomi. It's near the anniversary of Queen Velis's death.
Yeah.
And he gets terrible news, right? More betrayal.
Yeah, awful news. The guy he trusted to hold his northeastern flank, Bertrand Vagain. Turns out he wasn't loyal at all. He was actually Moran II, a pretender from the old Golianid line, and he'd risen in revolt, the second Golianid revolt. So even as Rolan wins the big battle, the kingdom is just crumbling from within.
Unbelievable. So Rolan, probably reeling from this, seeks comfort in the basilica.
Right, near where Velis was remembered. The Ventineras, these holy women, are helping him maybe remove armor, prepare for prayer. But even there, sacred ground, treachery.
How did it happen?
5 other figures dressed as Ventineras emerge. The sources are a bit murky, maybe Skydenai mercenaries in disguise, maybe just local women paid off. They attack the real holy women first, cut them down. Rolan reacts instantly. draws his dagger. He's still a warrior, even exhausted, kills 4 of them, but he's overwhelmed. They wound him 7 times. One deep wound to the thigh proves fatal.
He doesn't die inside.
No. He manages to stagger out of the basilica, collapses on the steps outside, dies right there in the cold autumn rain, sources say. Just outside the sacred walls. Alone. Betrayed. Moments after his greatest victory. What an end.
Wow. Okay, part 4. The immediate aftermath. The shattering. 496 to 499.
Chaos. Absolute chaos. The day after Rolan dies, the Voltanes launch a surprise attack by sea. They take Drolomi, Roland's loyalists. Driven out, they try to get into Krysmir, the main fortress, but the commander there, Tarloir, shuts the gates on them, refuses entry.
No loyalty left.
And Roland's body.
His last few followers take it away, give him a warrior's farewell. A pyre by Lake Voria, end of an era.
And the kingdom.
Shatters immediately, like dropping a glass. You've got Roland's loyalists backing his infant daughter, Nimhryce I. The Raphaelids rally around the captive son, Gorion. Marron II, the Golianid pretender, holds territory up north but can't take Krysmir.
And Tarloir, the guy who shut the gates. Tarloir Vimoil. He sees his chance, he controls Krysmir, and critically, he has both child heirs, Gorion and Nimhryce. So he declares himself Prince of Krysmir, tries to end the whole thing. In spring 497, he actually betroths 5-year-old Gorion to 2-year-old Nimhryce, tries to merge the claims, declare the Antler Wars over.
Bit optimistic. Did anyone buy it?
Not really. The fragmentation just kept going. Chrysalis and Paradel declare themselves republics, like the Laery to the east. Power shifts away from nobles. Up north, Teleris Raquerle allies with the Ridna king, Humlock. They set up an independent queendom of Ophiria.
Wow, Teleris ends up queen.
Yep. And then there's Roland's fleet commander, Gnar. He backs Roland's other son, Valcaire, but the poor kid dies before he's even 1 year old. Early 498. So Gnar then switches his support to Valcaire's sister, Vildice. It's just a mess of competing claims.
So one king dies, and within months, maybe a year, we have, what, 6 different factions?
Yeah.
2 princesses, a captive prince, a pretender king, a self-made prince, republics, a queendom.
At least. The Union Kingdom founded by Thuranus and Ionin, gone, utterly destroyed.
But here's the twist you mentioned earlier. Politically, it's chaos. But economically.
That's what's so fascinating in the sources. The cities actually started to recover surprisingly quickly by the late 490s. Why? Well, no more crippling royal taxes funding endless wars. Fewer corrupt officials demanding tolls. Trade actually picked up. Smuggling probably flourished too. And, critically, where the nobles failed, the city guild stepped in. Merchants, artisans, they took over local governance, started rebuilding, kept things running.
So the political structure collapsed, but society at the city level found a way. That's incredible irony. Roland wins the war militarily, neutralizes Raphael, crushes Voltai's army, only to be murdered, which allows Voltai, the very independence he fought against, to emerge as the strongest power out of the wreckage by 499.
Exactly. The newly independent Principality of Voltai ends up occupying key central territories. They become the dominant force. And it leads to that final thought. The scholars back then were terrified. They thought the whole shattered region would just get swallowed up by its neighbors, Leoparador, or the newly powerful Voltai. So, given that one king's death caused such total political collapse, how much did that surprising resilience at the local level, the guilds, the recovering trade, the lower taxes, actually matter? Did that bottom-up recovery maybe change the long-term course? Did it help prevent Daconia from being completely annexed later on? That's something for you, the listener, to think about.
A really provocative question about where real power lies with the crown or with the communities. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the sources.
In the vale of Rivaldildy, where the rivers meet the sky, the banners of King Roland flew high, never shy. With steel and with honor, his army did stand to defend the Union Kingdom, the blood of his land. Oh, Roland brought forth the warriors so bold. Your sword sang of glory, your heart forged in gold. But in the autumn's gray shadow, your flame did depart, leaving naught but a legend and a tale for the heart. thinking victory near. But Rolan was waiting, his eyes sharp, his spear. In the mire and the marsh, the battle was waged, with arrows like rain, and the foes in a cage. Oh, Rolan Bloodhorn, the warrior so bold, your sword sang of glory, your heart forged in gold. But in the autumn's gray shadow, your flame did depart, leaving naught but a legend and a tale for the heart. Bellamy's halls, where the whispers did creep, a dagger found Rolan in the silence so deep. 7 wounds he did suffer as the rain kissed his brow. The last king of Daconia, brought down by a vow. Oh, Rolan Bloodhorn, the warrior so bold, your sword sang of glory, your heart forged in gold. But in the autumn's gray shadow, your flame did depart, leaving naught but a legend and a tale for the heart. By the shores of Lake Varia, under skies cold and pale, they lit the pyre high with a sorrowful wail. The flames took their king, but his spirit remains in the songs of his people, in the winds and the rains. Oh, Rolan Bloodhorn, the warrior so bold, your sword sang of glory, your heart for